Chapter 655. Ling Xiaotian's familiar face came into view. His facial features were old, his body shriveled, and his appearance haggard. He looked like a completely different person from the once high-spirited Northern Continent Empire's palace master. Looking at the face that had aged because of him, Su Yu's heart was filled with warmth. In order to extend his future, to create a tomorrow for him, and to save his life, Ling Xiaotian had sacrificed himself to pass on the bloodline of the evil ghost to Su Yu, giving him a new beginning in life. As for him, he had aged and died. Su Yu silently took out all of the crystals from his space ring and placed them all into the dragon-shaped coffin. The dragon-shaped coffin silently absorbed the vital energy, slowly releasing a special energy that entered Ling Xiaotian's body. His shriveled body began to fill up at a speed visible to the naked eye, and he regained his luster. His old face also gradually regained its human color, and his handsome facial features reappeared. However, his head of white hair could no longer return to its former state. His eyelids twitched, and a pair of deep black eyes slowly opened. "Palace Master Ling," Su Yu called out softly. The moment he opened his eyes, the shackles binding his heart were finally released. The feeling of being relieved of a heavy burden turned into a smile and gratification that bloomed on his lips. Ling Xiaotian was at a loss at first, but he gradually woke up. He had been asleep for a long time, and his speech was unclear. "Yin, you are still alive." Although he had been asleep, Ling Xiaotian knew that he had lived for a long time. He had never thought that he would see the light of day again. Su Yu nodded, and with a smile, he told him everything that had happened in the past 3 years, from the vengeful Black Snow Devil King to the current Heavenly Law Alliance Master. After listening to him, Ling Xiaotian, who had completely recovered, let out a long sigh. He looked at Su Yu with an indescribable emotion. "Back then, I had only kept my promise. As long as I was alive, I would protect you. I never thought that you would become the Heavenly Law Alliance Master." His words were filled with emotion. There was admiration for Su Yu, pride for his achievements, and helplessness for Su Yu leaving the Empire of Darkness to become the Heavenly Law Alliance Master. His heart was still filled with the Empire of Darkness, even though he had almost died there. "Palace Master, I will set off for the Empire of Darkness now. The grudge between me and the Empire of Darkness has been settled. Please be at ease," Su Yu said, seeing through his thoughts. As expected, a relaxed expression appeared on Ling Xiaotian's face. "That's good. Since that's the case, you should make a move quickly. I'll leave the Northern Continent to you." Su Yu nodded. "Elder Jiu and Palace Master Ling, please help me take care of Phoenix Master Qiu and Lord Yu. I will surely return within 3 days." Elder Jiu nodded. "Yes, there is no need to worry. Lord Yu is only unconscious, but her life is not in danger. She should be fine. As for Phoenix Master Qiu, although her injuries have stabilized, she still needs some special elixirs. I don't have them with me, but the headquarters of the Empire should have them. When you borrow the troops, you can ask for them." Over the past 10 days, he had managed to stabilize Phoenix Master Qiu's condition with the help of resources, but her life was still in danger. "These are the elixirs that you need to take with you. Take them all and remember to bring them back." Elder Jiu tossed a jade pendant over. Su Yu caught it in his hand and scanned it. He was able to see its contents clearly. "Phoenix Tail Purple Fire Pill, Peerless Moon Fall Pill. Alright, I got it," Su Yu muttered softly. "I'll take my leave first." After he spoke, Su Yu flew away. What a powerful soul energy! Su Yu's seemingly casual actions shocked Elder Jiu. He couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. Ling Xiaotian, who was beside him, clasped his hands behind his back and looked in the direction that Su Yu had left. He wore a benevolent smile as he spoke meaningfully. "Elder Jiu, now that things have come to this, do you still want to hide your identity?" His words were abrupt. According to their seniority and abilities, Ling Xiaotian was just a small fry in front of Elder Jiu, yet he still dared to speak to him in such a manner. Elder Jiu squinted his eyes. Who are you? Are you really just a palace master of the Northern Continent's empire? Ling Xiaotian turned around and looked at Elder Jiu. He was calm and composed, as if he wasn't afraid of Elder Jiu at all. He then said calmly, Elder Jiu, it would be better if you don't know who I am. After all, you might get yourself killed if you do. His words were filled with killing intent, which made one's heart shudder. At this moment, Ling Xiaotian seemed like he had changed from a person who was on the brink of death to a completely different person. He was mysterious and strange, completely unlike Ling Xiaotian. Who are you? Elder Jiu's expression changed, as if he was facing a great enemy. Ling Xiaotian looked at him with a sharp and profound gaze. I already said that it wouldn't do you any good if you knew. You just need to know that I don't have any evil intentions. Elder Jiu's eyes flickered, and he only calmed down after a long while. Okay, I don't have any evil intentions in hiding my identity. I just want to protect myself. I hope that's the case. Su Yu is very important to me, and if he dies, no one can save you. Ling Xiaotian left behind these words calmly before he flew away. However, before he left, his gaze passed by Elder Jiu and fell on Phoenix Master Chiu. He then said calmly, Phoenix Master Chiu's injuries are no small matter. If I'm not mistaken, she was attacked by an all-creation old monster. You should take care of yourself and remind Su Yu that I don't want him to die just like this. An all-creation old monster? Elder Jiu turned his head around in shock and stared at Phoenix Master Chiu. He couldn't believe that such a terrifying existence would dare to attack Phoenix Master Chiu. Where are you going? Elder Jiu turned his head around and looked at Ling Xiaotian, who was about to leave. Ling Xiaotian revealed a mysterious smile. Tell Su Yu that we will meet again soon. Elder Jiu looked at Ling Xiaotian's departing back in shock. Who is he? After he pondered this for a long while, he muttered softly, It is rumored that the northern continent's Inu area is the birthplace of the Empire of Darkness, and it is guarded by a mysterious expert for generations. Could Ling Xiaotian be that mysterious expert? Su Yu, who was unaware of this, landed in the backyard. In the yard, Sienna was sitting under the shade of a tree. She was holding 5 fiery red feathers in her hands, and her face was filled with seriousness as she observed them carefully. It seemed like there were mysterious words carved on them. At this moment, a shadow fell on the feathers, and when Sienna raised her head, she saw a familiar face. Brother Su Yu. Sienna immediately revealed a cute smile, and 2 swirls appeared on her cheeks. What are you looking at? Su Yu squatted down and pulled her into his embrace. Sienna blushed, but she obediently lay in his embrace and leaned her head on his shoulder. She blew her fragrant breath into Su Yu's ear and said, It's a feather left for me in the Fairy King's ruins. It seems like there's a medical technique on it, but I don't understand it. Brother Su Yu, please help me comprehend it. Medical technique? Su Yu glanced at it, and his expression became slightly unnatural. It was an extremely rare medical technique, and it was unexpectedly used to treat people whose dantians had been destroyed. Everyone knew that once one's dantian was destroyed, one's cultivation would be crippled. Su Yu was quite knowledgeable, but he had never heard that a destroyed dantian could be treated. However, the treatment method was quite strange. This technique required a large amount of primordial yin, which was combined with the Fairy King's liquid to reconstruct the dantian. Moreover, the reconstructed dantian would be much larger than an ordinary person's dantian. It's really strange that such a treatment method exists in this world. Su Yu clicked his tongue in wonder. Brother Su Yu, how did you manage to understand it so quickly? Why can't I understand it? Sienna pouted and wore a defeated look on her face. Su Yu smiled and stroked her head. You will understand it when you grow up. This technique involved dual cultivation between a man and a woman, so it would be strange if she could understand it. Sienna isn't young anymore. Sienna puffed up her cheeks and glared at Su Yu angrily. She looked quite adorable. Su Yu was slightly startled as he looked at her mature face. She had really grown up. Sienna, if you have time, please take care of Phoenix Master Chiu and Lord Yu. I will go out for a while, but I will come back soon, Su Yu said. Sienna understood Su Yu's current situation, so she obediently nodded her head. All right, Brother Su Yu, I will be fine if I'm alone. Oh, by the way, Brother Su Yu, Sister Yu, oh no, Sister Jingyu has something for me to pass to you. Sienna took out a book from her pocket. It was the Starry Sky Heavenly Book. In the Dragon Abyss of the 9 Underworlds, Xia Jingyu had asked Sienna to pass it to Su Yu. Unfortunately, Su Yu had only just met Qin Sienna now. What is this? Su Yu asked curiously as he took it. It seemed like this book had been with Sienna for some time. What did Xia Jingyu want to pass to Su Yu at that time? Su Yu was curious, so he tried to open it. However, he discovered that this heavenly book was a refined divine artifact, and it contained a wisp of its master's will. Su Yu could rely on his powerful soul to erase the will that Xia Jingyu had left behind, but it would harm Xia Jingyu. This was given to me by Sister Jingyu when she saved me in the Dragon Abyss of the 9 Underworlds. At that time, she sacrificed herself to save me. I didn't expect that Sister Yu was actually Sister Jingyu. It's no wonder that she saved me. Sienna was still moved by Su Yu's words. Su Yu was startled. The will in the book would disappear along with the death of its master. At that time, Xia Jingyu had been prepared to die, so she had decided to pass this book to Su Yu. What was in the book that was so important that Xia Jingyu would entrust it to him before her death? Okay, I will accept it. When Xia Jingyu wakes up, I will ask her directly. Su Yu nodded, then kissed Sienna's forehead. Sienna, wait for me. I will come back soon. Sienna's face became flushed, and she shyly waved at Su Yu as he left. Su Yu turned around and looked at the petite figure that was standing in the sunset, waving goodbye to him. His heart was moved. She had always been by his side, and she had always placed him in the most important position in her heart. She was so weak and small, and she needed to be protected. After 4 years of trials and tribulations, it was time for them to settle their relationship. Sienna, wait for me to come back. Once the continent's matters are settled, I will give you an explanation for our engagement. Su Yu smiled as he made up his mind. Chapter 656. What did you say? Sienna was startled, but she quickly understood what he meant. Her small face was as red as an apple, and it felt hot. She stamped her feet, lowered her head, and ran away. Her big eyes were filled with shyness. Su Yu heaved a sigh of relief as he looked at her retreating figure. Between Sienna and Xia Jingyu, he had finally made his choice. He could not let Sienna down. Su Yu felt as if a huge burden had been lifted from his heart. Without any reluctance, he tore through the air and flew into the distant sky. Northern Continent, Phoenix Cabinet. The once glorious Phoenix Cabinet was now desolate and uninhabited. Palaces and pavilions that had been destroyed by the battle could be seen everywhere. Broken fences and dilapidated walls could be seen. Mountains and rivers fill one's eyes. Falling flowers and wind hurt one's heart. It is better to pity those in front of you. On the lakeside, a handsome young man with a well-defined face was muttering to himself. He had a faint smile on his face. Numerous half-immortals stood ramrod straight behind him. They held blades in their hands, and they were murderous, cold, and extremely dignified. However, they did not move at all, as if they were wooden poles. They were extremely respectful. The Phoenix Cabinet, a famous sect that gathers geniuses and beauties in the Zhenlong continent, is finally beneath my feet. Looking at it from afar, the beauties are as beautiful as flowers, living up to their name. The handsome young man was also a divine master. Now, when the 5th Saint Master is patrolling, I will be able to give him a big gift. The handsome young man smiled and said, I asked you to pick some beautiful women from the captives. How is it going? The guard behind him was very respectful. "Sixth Saint Master, it has been done." He clapped his hands, and 10 beautiful disciples of the Phoenix Cabinet were escorted over. As far as the eye could see, they were either charming, pure, cold, arrogant, or delicate. They had all sorts of temperaments and exquisite appearances, and it caused one to exclaim endlessly with admiration. The Sixth Saint Master looked at them one by one and furrowed his brows. They are not bad, but their cultivation levels are too low. A woman's primordial een will accumulate as her cultivation level increases. Are there no beautiful women with high cultivation levels? Sixth Saint Master, in terms of appearance, the Phoenix Cabinet's master and the former eldest disciple, Fairy Feng, are the most beautiful. They are so exquisite that the Fifth Saint Master would definitely like them. However, these two have already lost their virginity. I'm afraid that it will be difficult for the Fifth Saint Master to take a liking to them, the guard replied while trembling with fear. Phoenix Cabinet Master and Feng Xianzi, the two of them are indeed peerless beauties that are rarely seen in this world. I can't help but feel pity for them. The Sixth Saint Master was in charge of attacking the Phoenix Cabinet, so he had naturally seen the two of them before. Their beauty was indeed astonishing. Such a woman was actually robbed of her virginity. What a waste! The Sixth Saint Master sighed with regret. The guards were also secretly pained. Those two delicate and beautiful women could be said to be the best in the world, yet someone beat them to it. It was truly a pity. What they didn't know was that both of them had their first time taken by the same person. Sixth Saint Master, how should we deal with the two of them? Since they have lost their value, can you reward them to our brothers? The Sixth Saint Master needed virgins, but they didn't need them. Other than those two exquisite beauties, there were also many beautiful women in the Phoenix Cabinet. To them, this place was like paradise on earth. After this sacred lord is done playing with those two women, I will naturally reward them to you. The Sixth Saint Master's eyes were filled with flames, and the corners of his mouth curled into an evil smile. However, now is not the time. Let's talk about this after the Fifth Saint Master has enjoyed them. Although the two of them have lost their virginity, their primordial een might not be completely exhausted. Now is not the time for us to enjoy them. The same goes for all of you. Before the Fifth Saint Master's inspection ends, none of the captives are allowed to touch a single hair on the two women. Otherwise, if you ruin the Fifth Saint Master's plan, I will destroy both your bodies and souls. As the Sixth Saint Master spoke, his voice became stern and extremely harsh. Yes, everything was done according to the Fifth Saint Master's inspection. Everything has been handled properly. I just don't know how Xue Wu and Wu Hen are doing. The Northern Continent is the first battle of the Fifth Saint Master's inspection. Nothing can go wrong, the Sixth Saint Master muttered. The guard behind him said, Sixth Saint Master, you don't have to worry. The Seventh Saint Master, Xue Wu, and the Eighth Saint Master, Wu Hen, have brought their elite troops with them. It should not be a problem for them to deal with two insignificant factions. Upon hearing this, the Sixth Saint Master's eyes flickered with a deep and wise light. I am not worried about Wu Hen. Although his troops and battle prowess are not as strong as Xue Wu's, he is calm and composed. Thus, he should not be defeated. However, Xue Wu is stubborn and conceited. He might make a mistake. Report. All of a sudden, an anxious shout could be heard from outside the Phoenix Cabinet. The person who appeared was a white-haired old man. His eyes were sharp, and his expression was one of panic. Yuzhong, why are you so anxious? The Sixth Saint Master furrowed his brows. Yuzhong ignored the guard and strode forward. He greeted the Sixth Saint Master and said, Sixth Saint Master, something bad has happened. The army led by Xue Wu has been completely annihilated. His voice reverberated clearly in the ears of the guards. However, none of them believed him. In fact, they even wondered if they had heard wrongly. Xue Wu, who had swept across the continent and caused the people of the Zhenlong continent to tremble in fear, was actually completely annihilated? Since when did the Zhenlong continent possess such battle prowess? You say that again. The sixth Saint Master's handsome face was covered with a layer of frost. Yu Zhong gritted his teeth and repeated, Xue Wu's army has been completely annihilated. Crack! The bluestone bricks that the sixth Saint Master had placed both his hands on broke into pieces with a cracking sound. His calm face had long since disappeared, and it had been replaced by a gloomy expression. Was it done by the Empire of Darkness? The sixth Saint Master asked coldly. He couldn't figure out where such a powerful force could have come from in the Zhenlong continent. The only possibility was that the Empire of Darkness had yet to make a move. No. Yu Zhong had a look of disbelief on his face. It was done by someone else. Who? Is there such a powerful force in the Zhenlong continent? The sixth Saint Master was shocked. The Heavenly Law Alliance. Yu Zhong said. Saint Master Xue Wu was killed by the Heavenly Law Alliance's Alliance Master. Impossible. The sixth Saint Master replied without hesitation. If it was the Heavenly Law Alliance's First World Senior, then there might still be a chance. However, the so-called Alliance Master was just a piece of trash who didn't even reach the fairy realm. So, how could he have possibly killed Xue Wu? Yu Zhong shook his head in a deep voice. His face was filled with shock. No, it was the Heavenly Law Alliance's new Alliance Master. His name is Su Yu. Su Yu? Who is he? Is there any expert of the fairy realm in the Zhenlong continent that we don't know about? The sixth Saint Master's eyes shone with a strange light. Yu Zhong's voice was trembling. He isn't some divine being, nor is he an expert of the fairy realm. According to what I know, 3 years ago, he was just a lowly, nameless soldier. He comprehended the pure divine decree and alerted the great Saint Master. Originally, he should have been killed by the great Saint Master, but the King of Darkness intervened and resolved the problem. I had no choice but to hunt him down. However, he disappeared from the world in the end. I never expected that he would reappear 3 years later as the Alliance Master of the Heavenly Law Alliance. Moreover, he possesses extraordinary strength. According to the reports from our spies, Saint Master Wu Hen became his captive, and Saint Master Xue Wu was captured alive by him with a magical treasure. Yu Zhong was the fairy realm martial artist who had been hiding in the Zhenlong continent. The ninth Saint Master was also the ancestor of the Yu clan, one of the 8 great ancient clans. Among the Saint Masters, his ranking was the lowest. The ninth Saint Master couldn't imagine that the lowly lad he had once hunted down would one day become the Heavenly Law Alliance's master. Slap! Suddenly, the ninth Saint Master's face was slapped, leaving a bright red palm print. Scoundrel! How could you only tell me about this now? The sixth Saint Master flew into a rage. 100 years ago, our king paid a great price to hide you in the continent. You were to monitor all of the strong martial artists who appeared in the continent. You were to report to us immediately if there was anyone with outstanding abilities who could become our hidden enemy. Why did you hide this from Su Yu? The ninth Saint Master said bitterly. He was just a nobody back then, and his whereabouts were unknown. Hence, I didn't pay much attention to him. A nobody? Yu Zhong, I think that you have gone senile. The sixth Saint Master said coldly. The divine decree has always been mysterious and unfathomable. Martial artists who have taken this path all possess unimaginable powers, especially after their divine decree has reached the pure divine realm. They are almost invincible among their peers. If they manage to comprehend a powerful divine decree, they will have the ability to kill people at a higher level than them. Hence, they are a group of mysterious martial artists who are feared by everyone in Jiuzhou. He then added, Did you forget that he was one of the Jiuzhou Emperor's 5 great guards, the Wuxin Daoist? He relied on his divine decree to become as powerful as a prefecture's king. Even our central prefecture's king was extremely wary of him. Among the 5 great guards, he was the one that the central prefecture's king feared the most. This lad managed to cultivate his divine decree to the pure divine realm, yet you still think that he is just a nobody? I think that you have been in the Zhenlong continent for too long, and your brain has become muddled. Yu Zhong's heart thumped as he heard the 6th Saint Master's stern criticism. He knew that he might have really made a mistake. If he had reported this matter earlier, the central prefecture might have sent even stronger martial artists to kill this lad at all costs. How could such a situation have occurred? I was just inspecting this place. 6th Saint Master, please have mercy on me. Yu Zhong's forehead was dripping with cold sweat. The 6th Saint Master snorted coldly. Now that we are in dire need of manpower, I will naturally not touch you. I will settle the score with you after the matters in the Zhenlong continent are settled. Guard this place. I will go and meet the Heavenly Law Alliance Master. After the 6th Saint Master finished speaking, his eyes flickered as he flew into the sky and left. Light and shadow flashed past as the scenery started to reverse. Suyu stepped on a cloud and traveled millions of miles in a single day. He crossed the Jiuzhou continent and headed straight for the Empire of Darkness. Master, is it really as you said? After the dry cloud 5 elemental formation fuses with the Underworld Pearl, it can unleash 30% of the Underworld Pearl's power? Suyu asked as he flew. The blue and yellow round pearl that had almost killed Xuewu was the product of the fusion of the dry cloud 5 elemental formations Blue Pearl and the Underworld Pearl. Suyu had only refined less than 10% of the Underworld Pearl, so he obviously did not have the ability to fuse it. It was Yun Yazi who had helped Suyu craft it. Hee, do you think I would lie to you? The Underworld Pearl contains too much ghost energy. Even if you refine it, you will not be able to unleash its full power. You will just be wasting such a precious treasure. Why don't you refine it into your dry cloud 5 elemental formation and transform it into the Underworld Great Formation? Then, you can use the ghost energy within it to destroy your enemies. Its power is more than 10 times that of your dry cloud 5 elemental formation. The Underworld Great Formation? Suyu licked his lips excitedly. Although he did not know what it was, he knew that it was definitely not a simple formation since it had come out of Yun Yazi's mouth. It's a pity that I only have 1 Underworld Pearl. If I had a few more, I could transform all 5 round pearls. Then, its power would be truly impressive. Yun Yazi said regretfully. Chapter 657. Yun Yazi suddenly said, however, if it is just a pearl, combined with your first dragon's body, you will be able to unleash an unimaginable power. This pearl is extremely heavy, and if someone's body isn't strong enough to fight you, they would probably cry but have no tears. The Underworld Pearl was incredibly heavy. Even though it looked like it was only 3 feet long, its weight was terrifying. Even Suyu, who had yet to refine it, could not hold it at all. If one day Suyu could successfully refine it, he would be able to control it as he pleased. Combined with his first dragon's body, he would be able to destroy mountains and crack the earth if he threw it out. Who would dare to take it head-on? Master, can you understand the scriptures on the evil dragon divine body? The words on it are not the human race's language that I have seen before. Suyu took out the evil dragon divine body scripture. The writing on it was strange, and Suyu could not recognize a single word. This is the dragon race's language. It would be strange if you could recognize it. Yun Yazi rolled his eyes. Dragon race's language? Suyu was very curious. Did the dragon race still exist in this world? The dragon race has long disappeared in the sands of time, and there are very few who can recognize the dragon race's language. However, I have studied the dragon race before, so I have some understanding of their language. This evil dragon divine body is the dragon race's holy cultivation technique, also known as the evil dragon 4 transformations. Every time one cultivates a new level, they can evolve to the next state, and their fighting power will soar. From what I know, this cultivation technique ranks among the top 3 body refining techniques, Yun Yazi said frankly. Suyu was startled. Top 3 body refining techniques? Yun Yazi was so mysterious that Suyu had never seen through him. His knowledge was so high that it was shocking. For this technique to be ranked among the top 3, it was obvious how powerful it was. Swish! A ray of light, which contained a consciousness, shot out from the jade box and entered Suyu's forehead. This is my research on the various races' languages, Yun Yazi said. You can read it all. Knowledge is power, and the more you know, the better it will be for you. Suyu was excited. These seemingly ordinary insights were actually more valuable than magical treasures. Thank you, Master. Suyu was overjoyed. He immediately immersed his mind into the book and flipped through the notes that Yun Yazi had given him. Yun Yazi chuckled. I have said that I will officially start helping you in your cultivation. Naturally, I am not lying. You can slowly comprehend it. It will take about a day to reach the Empire of Darkness. You have a day to comprehend it. Suyu was already immersed in it and did not respond. As Suyu immersed himself in the complicated knowledge, he was amazed. The amount of information contained in this wisp of consciousness was shockingly huge. It would take at least a year to digest all of it. This was under the premise that Suyu's level of comprehension was extraordinary. There are actually so many intelligent races in this world? Suyu gasped in amazement. In Yun Yazi's research, apart from the Dragon Clan, there was also the Demon Clan, the Ghost Clan, the Insect Clan, and so on. These were all clans that had never appeared in the Zhenlong continent. What race is this? Suddenly, Suyu realized that there was still a huge amount of information in this wisp of consciousness that was sealed. Divine race. What kind of race is that? Suyu was amazed. The information of this part of the seal only revealed the general content, which belonged to the God Clan. However, what kind of race was the so-called God Clan? More importantly, Yun Yazi had intentionally sealed this part of the information, not allowing Suyu to read it. Since my teacher has intentionally sealed it, it seems like I am asking in vain, Suyu thought to himself. The 2 words, God Clan, seemed to have some kind of invisible magical power that had been imprinted in Suyu's mind, and it was difficult for him to get rid of it. Suppressing his curiosity, Suyu's attention once again fell on the Dragon Clan's words. Just the Dragon Clan's words alone would require Suyu to comprehend them without rest or sleep for a month. Suyu was extremely interested, so he translated the evil dragon divine body word by word, gradually mastering hundreds of rare Dragon Clan's words. After half a day, Suyu came back to his senses, feeling somewhat exhausted. He rubbed his forehead and said, The Dragon Clan's words are really obscure and hard to understand. A single word usually contains several different meanings. I need to ponder over a single sentence for an hour before I can determine its true meaning. After working for half a day, Suyu had only managed to decipher 6 sentences of the evil dragon divine body. He was still a long way from comprehending it completely. If the Dragon Clan's words were like this, then the Demon Clan's words, Ghost Clan's words, and other such words were also profound and would require a great deal of effort to study them. My teacher has really given me a great treasure trove. Suyu was well aware of the significance of studying these words, as they were too precious. His heart was filled with joy, and he prepared to once again immerse himself in studying the Dragon Clan's words. Swoosh! It was at this moment that 2 afterimages flew over from the horizon. One of them was red, while the other was white. The red afterimage was a red-robed old man. He had short white hair, and his face was filled with wrinkles. He was currently fleeing with a pale face. Behind him, a sharp aura was quickly approaching him. It was a young man clad in white armor. His cultivation was extremely high, and he was at the level 1 fairy realm. He was comparable to the otherworldly army's military commander. As for the red-robed old man, he was also at the level 1 fairy realm, but his aura was much weaker than the latter's. It seemed like he had just achieved a breakthrough not too long ago. Humph! Old thing, since you managed to escape from our encirclement, you are quite skilled. However, this is the end of it. Hand over the cloud-galloping horse. The young man shouted coldly. As he waved his sleeves, a cold silver sword flew out of them and flew toward the red-robed old man's back. The old man turned pale with fright, and he hurriedly took out a high-grade divine artifact's silk cloth from his sleeves. Sizzle! As the silk cloth was torn apart, the high-grade divine artifact was immediately shattered. A bunch of uncivilized barbarians from the Zhenlong continent want to compete with me? The white-armored youth laughed coldly. His silver sword sliced through the cloth and pierced through the old man's body without any hesitation. Fortunately, the trajectory of the silver sword, which was supposed to be a deadly strike, was slightly changed due to the silk cloth's obstruction. Thus, it pierced through the old man's ribs. However, this strike still managed to severely injure him. The old man's body somersaulted several times in the air before he fell heavily on the ground. At the same time, a jade box fell out of his bosom. Inside the jade box, there was an agile pony sealed motionlessly inside the jade box. The pony's whole body emitted a shocking spiritual pressure, and it contained a boundless energy. It was purer and more powerful than any elixir that Su Yu had ever seen. Swoosh! As the jade box flickered, it appeared in the white-armored young man's hand. His eyes shone brightly as he said, "Hee, a cloud-galloping horse. I didn't expect that the Zhenlong continent would have such a spiritual object. It would be a waste to give it to you. Even if we fairies consume it, we can still refine our vital energy. I really don't understand how the Zhenlong continent managed to grow such a rare spiritual object in Jiuzhou." The red-robed old man felt his heart ache, but he didn't have time to think about it. "You want to leave? Since I ran into you, then you don't need to leave." The white-armored young man pointed his finger at the old man, causing the silver flying sword to pierce through the air and penetrate the old man's head. At this moment, the red-robed old man was severely injured, so it was difficult for him to dodge such a dangerous strike. Just when it seemed like it was about to be destroyed, a clanging sound echoed out, and the sharp silver sword was suddenly cut into 2 pieces. It seems like the treasures of Jiuzhou's people aren't that great. They aren't even comparable to the treasures of an uncivilized barbarian like me. A cold voice echoed out, "Splutter!" As their minds were connected, the white-armored young man spouted a mouthful of blood and retreated in shock. "Who is it? Who are you?" His silver sword, which was close to being a semi-manufactured spiritual artifact, had unexpectedly been cut into 2 so easily. Swoosh! As a breeze blew past, a ghost-like figure appeared beside the red-robed old man. The handsome young man, who looked like a celestial child, was none other than Su Yu. "Who are you?" The white-armored young man looked at the small golden sword in Su Yu's hand, which he was playing with. His heart shuddered, as he knew that it was a semi-manufactured spiritual artifact. He didn't believe that a half-fairy could easily cut his silver sword with a semi-manufactured spiritual artifact. After all, Su Yu's power was no small matter. Why would a dead person need to know so much? Su Yu flicked his finger, causing the small golden sword to turn into nothingness and disappear. When it reappeared, it was right next to the young man's neck. The young man's expression changed in shock, and he immediately turned his head to evade it. However, he noticed that another golden light had appeared next to him and mercilessly penetrated him. A second small golden sword. You are the Heavenly Law Alliance's master." These were the last words he uttered in his life, as the small golden sword mercilessly penetrated his neck, causing his body to slowly fall to the ground. Su Yu waved his hand, causing the small golden sword and the jade box to fall into his palm at the same time. After fighting several fairies, Su Yu had a rough idea of his own power. He could easily deal with level 1 fairies, while level 2 fairies would require some effort. As for level 3 fairies, he would need to use most of his power. As for level 4 fairies, he still hadn't fought them yet, and it would be difficult to determine the victor. You are Alliance Master Su? The old man behind him asked in a trembling voice. His eyes were filled with shock and longing. Suyu calmly turned his head and asked, "Who are you?" The old man's body shivered, as he felt overwhelmed by the unexpected favor. He quickly cupped his fists and greeted Suyu. "I'm the Empire of Darkness's Chief Inspector, Bai Chong." "Greetings, Alliance Master Su." The Empire of Darkness Chief Inspector? Bai Yun and Bai He were both admirals, and this person was their overall leader, the Chief Admiral. "You and I aren't subordinates, so you don't need to be so courteous." Suyu waved his sleeves, causing a breeze to help him up. Excitement and delight appeared on Bai Chong's face, as he examined Suyu in amazement. He then said excitedly, "Alliance Master Su, you led our Zhenlong army and broke the otherworldly world's legend of invincibility. You are truly a role model for our Zhenlong army, and you deserve our respect. So, it won't be too much for me to be courteous to you." It was obvious from his words that Bai Chong respected Suyu. Suyu calmly smiled. "It's just my duty, so you don't need to worry about it. If there isn't anything else, then I will take my leave." After saying that, he turned around and left without saying a word. He still had the cloud galloping horse in his hands, so if he didn't leave now, when would he? Bai Chong looked at Suyu's departing back and called out to him. However, he couldn't keep up with him due to his injuries. "He's really just like the rumors said. He's just a youth, which is really surprising." Bai Chong's eyes were still filled with excitement when he saw Suyu. He subconsciously stroked his chest as he recalled the cloud galloping horse. "Alliance Master Su, wait for me. My cloud galloping horse." Cough, cough. "My cloud galloping horse." Bai Chong gasped for breath as he chased after Suyu. It was unknown whether Suyu had done it intentionally or not, but Suyu had taken his cloud galloping horse with him. Chapter 658. Suyu, who was thousands of miles away, had an awkward expression. This was not the first time he had stolen someone else's treasure. However, this was the first time he had stolen something from an innocent person, so he felt a little guilty. In a sense, if Suyu had not intervened, the old man's life would have been in vain, not to mention whether the item would have belonged to him. But to Suyu it was still a little difficult to accept. "I'm sorry, Bai Chong," Suyu murmured. "This item is very precious to me. If I have the opportunity, I will compensate you." Suyu muttered to himself. He surveyed his surroundings and found a valley filled with flowers. It was a suitable place to hide. Tilting his shoulder, Suyu landed and entered the valley. He then found a suitable place to sit down cross-legged. He took out the jade box and looked at the nimble living creature, the small white horse. He could not help but click his tongue in wonder. He was no longer the kid he had been in the past. After experiencing the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion, his eyesight had improved. It was not difficult for him to see that the overflowing, powerful living creature was actually a plant. Cloud galloping horse. It is strange that the Zhenlong continent could produce such a spiritual creature. Yun Yazi let out a surprised cry. A plant like the cloud galloping horse requires extremely dense spiritual energy to grow. Even in a place like the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion, it would be impossible for it to grow. Even though the spiritual energy in the Zhenlong continent is 10 times denser, it is only comparable to that of the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion. I cannot see the possibility of such a spiritual creature growing here. This is strange. Suyu had some doubts in his heart. From what he knew, wasn't the Empire of Darkness surrounded by the otherworldly army? How did Bai Chong escape? Why did he have the cloud galloping horse? And why was he being hunted by the otherworldly fighters? The strangeness of the matter was incomprehensible. Let's not worry about it for now. Master, is it suitable to consume this item directly? Suyu could not resist the temptation. If it could refine vital energy for fairies, wouldn't it be even more effective for half-fairies? Unexpectedly, Yun Yazi did not hold back. If you do not wish to die from the poison, then consume it. I will not stop you. Suyu raised his brows. Does the cloud galloping horse have a deadly poison? Even though the cloud galloping horse is a spiritual creature of the universe, and it can provide great assistance to cultivators, it still contains a strange poison. Even if it were to be swallowed by a level 4 fairy, who could resist it with their powerful vital energy, the poison would still take effect on everyone else. Even though your first dragon's body is quite powerful, it still isn't at the level where you are immune to all poisons. Suyu was not frightened. Instead, he revealed a thoughtful expression. Then, Master, how should I consume this? Do you need to refine pills? Yun Yazi nodded. Yes. You need to combine it with a few precious ingredients to neutralize the poison, then refine it into a medicinal pill. As for these ingredients, you can find a few portions in the Zhenlong continent, but I'm afraid you'll have to calculate the time needed to find them in months. Yun Yazi consoled him. Don't be discouraged. The cloud galloping horse is in your hands, so consuming it is only a matter of time. If everything goes as I expected, the day you consume it will be the day you advance to the 3 crystals half-fairy realm. Suyu's eyes flickered with a shrewd light, and he slowly nodded. All right, I understand. Yes. You have been busy with political affairs recently, so your cultivation time has been reduced. You need to quickly deal with the matters of the continent. Only then will I be able to guide you at any time. During this period of time, I will recuperate. If there is nothing urgent, you don't have to wake me up. Suyu did not know that Yun Yazi had once appeared and killed an all-creation old monster. As a result, his soul had been severely damaged. This time, he would have to enter a state of deep sleep for a longer period of time to recover his soul energy. Suyu was stunned. He was going to enter a state of deep sleep again? However, he immediately revealed an eager look. That's fine. All right, take care of yourself. I hope that you will give me another surprise the next time I wake up. After Yun Yazi finished speaking, the jade box became deathly silent. Suyu tried to sense Yun Yazi several times. After confirming that Yun Yazi had entered a state of deep sleep, he looked at the jade box containing the cloud galloping horse. He smiled meaningfully and said, There is no need to wait for the next time. I can give you a surprise now. He opened his right palm and took out the cloud galloping horse, spreading it out on his palm. The cloud galloping horse, which was clearly a spiritual herb, looked like a real horse. Its small, snow-white body was bouncing around energetically. Poison? Suyu was surprised. He thought for a moment, then plucked a strand of white hair from the cloud galloping horse. Using his soul eyes, Suyu carefully observed the hair. He could faintly see that there was a white liquid hidden within the hair. Even though Suyu had the soul eyes, he would not have noticed that there was something hidden within the hair if he had not been warned. He then observed the entire cloud galloping horse. It was not difficult to discover that every part of the cloud galloping horse's body, its blood vessels, veins, flesh, and even its skin, contained a white liquid. It was undoubtedly the poison that Yun Yazi had said could kill anyone below the grade 4 fairy realm. After thinking for a moment, Suyu inserted the strand of hair he had plucked into the ground. The white liquid within the hair slowly seeped into the ground. At once, the blooming flowers and grass under Suyu's feet gradually turned yellow and lost their color. Finally, they were charred black, all of them decaying from the poison. The snakes, bugs, rats, and ants that were hiding in the valley were all poisoned to the ground. In just a short moment, the valley had become a world of death. At the same time, the air in the valley had a faint milky white color. After taking a breath, Suyu felt dizzy and shocked. Not good. Suyu immediately rose into the air, standing 10 miles away in the sky. At the same time, He revolved his vital energy to expel the milky white air from his body. Su Yu was slightly shocked to discover that the milky white air was not afraid of his vital energy. It gradually spread throughout Su Yu's body, completely unharmed. Su Yu's head became even more dizzy, and the scene in front of him became blurry. It was a sign that he was about to lose consciousness. A sense of danger welled up in his heart. He had wanted to test if the cloud galloping horse was poisoned, but he did not expect it to be so difficult to deal with. Even his vital energy was useless. Clenching his teeth, the thunder crystal in Su Yu's dantian immediately released a large amount of lightning. However, when the destructive lightning came into contact with the milky white air, it was as if it had passed through an ordinary fog. It was not affected in the slightest. The milky white air continued to spread throughout Su Yu's body. Su Yu's heart thumped. He had really provoked an incredible poison. Sensing that his consciousness had become even more blurry, Su Yu's heart became serious. Since lightning did not work, Su Yu immediately used ice. He used ice techniques to condense frost to freeze the milky white air in his body. At first, the milky white air was indeed frozen. However, after a short moment, the milky white air regained its freedom and started wreaking havoc in Su Yu's body. Chapter 659. Sizzle, sizzle, an almost indiscernible sound could be heard, causing Su Yu to be overjoyed. The terrifying milky white air current had been slightly melted by the flames. However, it was only slightly. The remaining milky white flames were about to reach Su Yu's heart. At this critical moment, Su Yu heaved a sigh of relief. It turned out that the thing that could restrain it was flames. Without thinking, Su Yu immediately took out the Red Lotus Incredible Umbrella and took out a wisp of furious Red Lotus flames. This flame was so powerful that it could easily turn a Grade 1 fairy into ashes. It was many times more powerful than the flames of the origin. Indeed, once the furious Red Lotus flames entered his body, the milky white air current quickly disappeared like snow melting in spring. Soon, the milky white air current that was wreaking havoc in Su Yu's body disappeared without a trace. Su Yu's life was no longer in danger. Su Yu let out a breath of relief and wiped the sweat off his forehead. He had gone through many trials and tribulations, but he had never thought that he would be nearly killed by a spiritual creature. No wonder Yun Yazi said that I would definitely die if I swallowed it directly. Just a strand of its hair contained a tiny amount of poison, yet it almost took my life. If I had swallowed the entire cloud galloping horse, even using all of my furious Red Lotus flames would not have been of any use. After experiencing such a dangerous situation, Su Yu took the cloud galloping horse in his hand seriously. I must deal with it carefully. Su Yu carefully grabbed a ball of furious Red Lotus flames and wondered if he should first burn the extremely dangerous strand of hair to prevent a similar crisis from occurring again. However, as he held the flames in his hand, Su Yu's eyes suddenly flickered. It would be a pity to destroy such a powerful poison. If I could use it, it might become a good trump card. Su Yu's eyes shone brightly as he carefully cut off all of the hair strand by strand, then carefully sealed them up. There were more than 300 strands of hair. After cutting off all of the cloud galloping horse's hair, Su Yu revealed a mysterious smile. Now, this is the part one am most looking forward to. As Su Yu held the cloud galloping horse in his hand, a spinning Milky Way gradually appeared on his palm. The vast stars were like specks of sand, dreamy and beautiful. Threads of white liquid could be seen being drawn into the Milky Way star sand within the cloud galloping horse's body. The cloud galloping horse's body gradually became transparent, and it looked like a perfect piece of unpolished jade. After a long while, the Milky Way star sand disappeared, and the cloud galloping horse lay on Su Yu's palm. When he used his soul eyes to examine the cloud galloping horse's body, he discovered that not only was the white liquid completely gone, even the other impurities had disappeared. Just like that, the poison, which required many precious materials to neutralize, was purified by the Milky Way star sand. As Suyu once again experienced the magical effects of the Emperor-based Saint artifact, the Milky Way star sand, Suyu realized how precious and useful the legacy left behind by Tianjizi was. At this moment, the pure and flawless cloud galloping horse didn't pose any threat to him anymore. All it had was the pure energy that even fairy realm experts would drool over. Without any hesitation, Suyu could no longer suppress the anticipation in his heart. He raised his head and swallowed it. At once, a wave of scorching, warm energy flowed from his mouth to his throat. The scorching sensation caused Suyu's face to turn red, and he coughed continuously. The taste couldn't even be described as wonderful. 15 minutes later, the burning sensation was still reverberating in his mouth and throat. At the same time, it continued to spread to his abdomen. Suyu felt as if there was a raging flame burning in his abdomen, which made him feel extremely uncomfortable. However, it was also at this moment that the scorching energy entered his dantian. There were 4 crystals in Suyu's dantian. 2 of them had already been successfully compressed into vital energy crystals. One was a thunder crystal, which had appeared out of nowhere, and the last one was a spiritual energy crystal, which had yet to be condensed into a vital energy crystal. After the scorching energy entered his abdomen, it immediately engulfed the 4 crystals. The intense scorching color caused the 4 crystals to undergo different changes. They all released their energy to resist the invasion of the scorching energy. Among them, the vital energy crystal released vital energy, the thunder crystal released lightning, and the spiritual energy crystal released spiritual energy. The vital energy and lightning had great resistance against the invasion of the scorching energy, and they kept it out of the crystal. However, the spiritual energy was the weakest, and it couldn't resist the invasion of the scorching energy. In just a short moment, 1/10 of the spiritual energy crystal had turned into a fiery red color. It had been occupied by the scorching energy, which was still invading it unceasingly. The space within the spiritual energy crystal was continuously being occupied and compressed. All of a sudden, a tiny bit of weak vital energy was born. It was a brand new energy that had been compressed to the extreme. With the continuous compression of the scorching energy, the amount of mutated spiritual energy increased, and more vital energy appeared. After an hour, 1/3 of the spiritual energy crystal had mutated into a vital energy crystal. However, this wasn't enough. The spiritual energy crystal started absorbing the external spiritual energy crazily to fill the empty space. Just like that, a large amount of the spiritual energy within a mile of Suyu's body was being absorbed. The spiritual energy crystal in his body was rapidly mutating into a vital energy crystal. The whole process lasted for half a day. Half a day later, Suyu's eyes were still closed, but his face was filled with a carefree smile. Boundless vital energy was rolling around his body. It was like a great flood, and an invisible pressure that could oppress people's hearts could be felt. The spiritual energy has disappeared, and only vital energy is left in my body. Feeling the drastic change in his dantian, Suyu felt like he had been reborn. Now that his vital energy was 30% stronger, the power of the techniques and treasures he used would increase again. Now that he was facing a grade 4 fairy, even if he couldn't defeat him, he could still escape. In such a chaotic situation, he finally had a way to save his life. As he slowly opened his eyes, 2 vital energy waves could be seen. As expected of the cloud galloping horse, its effects are still there. Suyu smiled and clicked his tongue in amazement. He had already broken through to the 3 crystals half-fairy realm and was only a step away from the fairy realm. However, the scorching energy was still in his dantian, stimulating the 3 vital energy crystals to compress. As such, the vital energy was being compressed to become purer. Once it reached a certain critical point, the vital energy crystals would mutate, and that would be the day he would break through to the fairy realm. As he clenched his fists and felt his unprecedented power, Su Yu's confidence soared. It's a pity that there aren't many spiritual creatures like the cloud-galloping horse in the Zhenlong continent. Otherwise, we would be able to quickly create a group of experts. Su Yu sighed inwardly. As he stood up, Su Yu flicked his sleeves and looked in the direction of the Empire of Darkness headquarters. It's time to go to the Empire of Darkness. The King of Darkness was a mysterious and unfathomable peerless ruler. He was the Seven Lords Palace's elder generation's Seven Lords of Darkness. After experiencing the drastic change in the world's spiritual energy 3 years ago, did they manage to break through their shackles and reach an astonishing cultivation level? Chief Inspector Bai Chong had the power of a Grade 1 fairy. Chapter 660. The drastic change 3 years ago had brought disaster to the Zhenlong continent, but it had also created a batch of fairy realm fighters due to the increase in spirit energy. For example, Bai Chong. Su Yu had never heard of any fairy realm fighters in the Zhenlong continent. Now that a governor had such abilities, it was obvious that Bai Chong was not the only fairy realm fighter. Su Yu had no choice but to be cautious. It was best to keep a low profile on this trip to the Empire of Darkness. After thinking for a moment, Su Yu took out a set of returning Principal Palace clothing. It was white and simple. If one did not recognize the symbol of the returning Principal Palace on the chest, it would be very ordinary and would not attract attention. After doing this, Su Yu's body flickered with lightning as he left using Thunder Escape. Half a day later, in the Middle Continent, at the top of a majestic mountain peak, lightning flashed, and a figure covered in surging lightning bolts stepped out. Empire of Darkness, we meet again. Su Yu looked at the horizon, at the giant mountain peak that pierced through the clouds and connected heaven and earth. He was filled with emotion. In the past, he had been captured by the divine eagle. Now, he was also the leader of an ancient force. That giant mountain was the continent's #1 peak, located in the center of the Zhenlong continent. It had been occupied by the Empire of Darkness since ancient times, and it was their headquarters. This peak was the symbol of the Empire of Darkness. But now, this peak was surrounded by a large number of soldiers. Scanning the surroundings with his soul eyes, Su Yu saw that there was an army of 800 soldiers around the peak. Every one of them was at least a half-fairy. There were 10 Grade 1 fairy inspectors, and there were countless 3 crystals half-fairies. It could be said that more than half of the otherworldly forces on the continent were gathered here. Seeing this, Su Yu could not help but shudder. It was rumored that the Empire of Darkness was surrounded by the otherworldly army. Not only was the news true, it was even more serious. There were 800 fairies, almost half of the invaders' forces. If the forces that had attacked the Heavenly Law Alliance and the outpost had been half as strong, the two factions would have long been annihilated. Under the heavy encirclement, anyone from the Empire of Darkness would be targeted. Hence, the giant mountain peak looked dead silent, with no signs of human activity. But the strange thing was that the chief inspector, Bai Chong, was outside the Empire of Darkness and was being chased by an enemy inspector. It was unbelievable. How did Bai Chong escape? With his strength, it was impossible for him to break through the blockade of 800 experts and escape. What puzzled Su Yu even more was that Elder Jiu had once said that the Empire of Darkness possessed the power to expel all otherworldly experts. So, why would they rather be surrounded than take any action? What were they plotting? Filled with doubts, Su Yu fixed his gaze on the giant peak. This peak was surrounded by a magnificent city. It was more majestic than any other city on the continent, and its surface area was extremely vast. But now, it was occupied by otherworldly experts and became an enemy zone. If nothing unexpected happened, the people in the city had all moved to the mountain peak. Through his transparent eyes, he could see that the interior of the mountain was extremely spacious. It was a grand, hollow mountain. Just as he had expected, the hollow mountain peak was filled with people of all races. There were all kinds of shops, and it was no different from a city. Even though it was a chaotic world, people's daily activities didn't stop. Instead, they continued to trade. Because of the impending war, people were panicking. In order to find things they needed to increase their strength, trade became more and more prosperous. Suyu nodded slightly. He wondered whether the 2 elixirs that could save Phoenix Master Chio's life were among the items that had been traded. Next, he had to figure out how to enter the mountain peak. After pondering it for a moment, Suyu made up his mind. There were many otherworldly experts, and if they gathered together, they would be quite terrifying. Even Suyu couldn't fight against 800 of them by himself. However, numbers could sometimes be a weakness. Suyu could rely on his magical treasures to pass through the encirclement alone. His only doubt was the Empire of Darkness's giant peak. Since this peak could stand tall for 3 years despite being surrounded by the otherworldly army, and the otherworldly army still couldn't break through it, it was obvious that this peak had some means of isolating outsiders. If Suyu charged to the foot of the mountain and was refused entry, it would become the most dangerous thing to do. Suyu stroked his chin as he fell into deep thought. All of a sudden, Suyu raised his brows. He could faintly detect a ripple of an aura. It was as if a living creature had suddenly appeared and disappeared. The ripple was very weak, and it was similar to the appearance of an ordinary wild beast. If this was an ordinary place, Suyu might have ignored it. However, in such a dangerous place, he couldn't afford to be careless. His eyes were dim, but they shone with a strange radiance. Soul energy slowly seeped out of his eyes, passing through all the obstacles behind him. After passing through several messy mountain rocks, Suyu finally found the source of the ripple. It was 3 carefully hidden figures, 2 men and a woman. Among the 2 men, one was a middle-aged man, while the other was a young man. The middle-aged man looked ordinary and inconspicuous. He was the type of person who wouldn't be noticed even if he was thrown into a crowd. The same was true for the young man. His appearance was very ordinary and inconspicuous. As for the woman, she looked pretty good. She was in her early 20s and had a petite figure. Her face was very delicate, like a porcelain doll's. She had long hair that was half a moon's length, and her bangs covered her forehead, revealing a pair of big, lively eyes. On top of her head, there was a bright pink wildflower, which added to her liveliness. However, there was a tinge of arrogance in her expression. "Father, why aren't we leaving? Don't we have the invisibility charm? Can't we return to the Empire directly?" The arrogant girl complained. The young man beside her chuckled and said, "Linger, the clan master is observing the enemy. Although we have the invisibility charm, we can't be careless." "I didn't ask you. Don't talk too much." Linger rolled her eyes and glanced at him. The young man laughed awkwardly. He didn't look angry at all. Instead, he looked at Linger with even more affection. "Linger, don't be rude to Ying-Ching." The middle-aged man, who was the clan master, scolded her in a low voice. "Ying-Ching is right. Don't be careless." Linger pouted and said, "Father, you don't love me, however." The middle-aged man's tone suddenly changed, and his tone became serious. "However, I am not observing the enemy. I am observing someone else." His deep gaze instantly sharpened. "Who is the clan master talking about?" Ying-Ching was shocked. He knew that the clan master was a Peak 3 Crystals half-fairy realm expert, and he could easily escape from the enemy's encirclement. However, the clan master was being so cautious. "Ah? Who is it? Where is it?" Linger opened her mouth wide and looked around with her big eyes. The middle-aged clan master said in a deep voice, "Didn't you notice that there is a person on that mountain? Moreover, he has been here for a while, but I only noticed him now." "Mountain?" Ying-Ching and Linger were both surprised, and Linger asked curiously, "Father, why didn't we feel any fluctuations of his aura? My aura-observing technique isn't any weaker than yours." As she spoke, Linger stuck her head out from behind the rock and looked at the mountain. She was shocked and said, "Ah, there is really a person," her mouth was covered by the middle-aged clan master, who lowered his voice and said, "Shoo." Linger was shocked and asked, "Father, who is that person? Why didn't my aura-observing technique sense anything even though he was there?" The aura-observing technique is an immortal-level cultivation technique, and it can detect any changes in aura within a 1-mile radius. A person's body naturally emits an aura, so it can be easily detected. So, why didn't I sense any changes in his aura when he came here? Linger asked in surprise. Ing Cheng was also alarmed and asked, "Clan Master, what is going on?" The middle-aged clan master said in a deep voice, "Isn't it simple? There are only two possibilities. First, his strength is far above ours. Although the aura-observing technique can detect any changes in aura within a 1-mile radius, if that person's strength is higher than ours, our senses will be affected under the spiritual pressure, and we won't be able to detect his presence. Second, he is proficient in some kind of secret technique that allows him to hide his aura. Even the aura-observing technique can't detect him. This kind of cultivation technique is most likely an immortal-level cultivation technique." As he said this, Ing Cheng and Linger heaved a sigh of relief. "Father, I saw him from afar. He is about the same age as us, so how could his strength be stronger than yours? There is no need to ask. This kid must be proficient in some kind of secret technique that allows him to hide his aura. It might not be a cultivation technique, but it is possible that he swallowed some elixirs." However, the middle-aged clan master warned her again, "Linger, how many times have I told you not to judge a book by its cover? Age doesn't decide everything. There are many young experts in the otherworldly world. There are many otherworldly people who are stronger than you." After Linger was scolded, she pouted her lips and became unhappy. When Ing Cheng saw this, he shifted his gaze and pretended to be deep in thought. "Clan Master, I think what Linger said makes sense. This person is just like us, standing sneakily outside the encirclement. He is most likely not someone from the otherworldly world, but someone from our continent. Moreover, we have never heard of a powerful expert from our continent's younger generation that is more powerful than you. Even our new generation's 7 Lords of Darkness didn't reach such a level, right?" What he said made sense. There were many talented experts in the Zhenlong continent, but none of them had reached the 3 crystals half-fairy realm. However, the middle-aged clan master shook his head and said, "That might not be the case. The 3 of us have already been out on a mission for 3 months. Did you forget about the legend of the Heavenly Law Alliance's master so quickly? The Heavenly Law Alliance's master is in existence who can easily kill a level 3 fairy realm expert. Do you not know about his identity as Inu? Inu. His name was like a sudden clap of thunder, which immediately caused them to feel deep veneration. He can't be counted. Ing Cheng was embarrassed, and he couldn't hide the respect in his eyes. If the rumors are true, then he is already a legendary figure who stands at the peak of the Zhenlong continent. He is comparable to our King of Darkness. How can we, who are in the same generation as him, compare ourselves to him? Ing Cheng was a level 2 fairy realm youth, so he could be considered one of the top geniuses in the Zhenlong continent. Chapter 661. To be born in the same era as this guy is a tragedy for all of us. Ing Cheng smiled bitterly and shrugged his shoulders helplessly. As long as Su Yu's shadow shrouded the entire Zhenlong continent, his peers would never be able to stand out. Unexpectedly, Ling who was at the side, curled her lips in disdain. "Look at you, you have no fighting spirit at all. No wonder you could not reach Su Yu's level. Do you know that Su Yu had only stepped into the Zhenlong continent 4 years ago? Do you know that 4 years ago, when we were all Saint Kings, he was still the lowest level of martial artists? Even 3 years ago, we weren't any weaker than him. So, how did Su Yu get to where he was now, 1 step at a time? The 100 Territories Alliance fought against the heroes, the Dynasty branch defeated the 10 Great Region Masters, The Phoenix Cabinet created their own world's edge for the person they loved, defeated all the geniuses of the North Continent, and became the #1 genius of the North Continent. He then added, "Now that I have returned to the continent, I will use the Black Snow Devil King's body as Su-Yu's. Then, I will use the power of a single person to turn the tide and lead the Heavenly Law Alliance to the continent's first great victory. Then, I will kill several hundred otherworldly half-fairies, as well as a grade 3 half-fairy with just a single strike. Then, I will be able to recover the Zhenlong continent's first territory." His achievements are the result of his hard work. As a man, to be able to reach this step, he can die without regret. He is not like you, who only knows how to complain and be jealous. At the mention of Su-Yu, Linger seemed to have turned into a chatterbox. She started chattering incessantly. Ing Cheng was embarrassed and had nothing to say. The middle-aged hall master smiled helplessly. "I've never seen you put so much effort into a mission. Yet you actually managed to find out everything about the Heavenly Law Alliance's Alliance Master. Furthermore, you have already repeated his deeds more than 3 times, to the point that my ears are about to grow calluses." Ling Er's face turned slightly red when she heard this, and she glared angrily. "Father? What nonsense are you talking about? I'm just doing my duty as an intelligence agent to find out more about the Heavenly Law Alliance Master. I don't have any other intentions." The middle-aged hall master smiled meaningfully. "Hee, I didn't say that Ling had other intentions. Why are you so anxious?" Hearing this, Ing Cheng's face darkened. As an intelligence officer, his ability to read people's thoughts and body language was naturally higher than that of an ordinary person. He could sense that something was amiss from Ling Er's eagerness to investigate the Heavenly Law Alliance's Alliance Master. Now that the Hall Master reminded him, he immediately came to a realization. Ling was probably interested in the Heavenly Law Alliance Master. Although Ing Cheng was jealous, there was nothing he could do. It was rumored that the Heavenly Law Alliance's Master, Su-Yu, was not only extremely powerful, but he was also extremely young and handsome. Moreover, he was also a person who valued relationships and was perfect in all aspects. Now that he had achieved a great victory in the continent, he was undoubtedly a great hero who had saved Zhenlong. Which young girl would not look forward to such a person and not admire him? "Father, I'm going to get angry if you talk nonsense again." Ling Er's face turned red as she glared at him angrily. The middle-aged hall master found it funny and said, Okay, I won't say any more." In any case, it was impossible for them to have any interaction with such a legendary figure. Even if his daughter really had feelings for him, there was nothing he could do. "Not good. That person is coming towards us." The middle-aged hall master's expression suddenly changed. Linger, who was embarrassed and angry, immediately found a place to vent. She stood up with a whoosh and said angrily, "I'll fight him." She was a 1 crystal half-fairy, so she could be considered an upper-class genius. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been entrusted with such a heavy responsibility by the Empire and entered the ranks of the intelligence agency. Ling The middle-aged hall master hurriedly shouted at her to stop, but it was already too late. He could only helplessly leap forward and protect Ling. Ing Cheng also stepped forward and examined the youth in front of him. Apart from his excessively handsome face and his simple white clothes, he didn't seem to be anything special about him. "Father, let me deal with him. You can judge whether he's an otherworldly person or not." After Ling spoke, she angrily charged forward. Years flow like water. As Ling pointed her finger at him, 3 water lotuses appeared above her head. Their petals then spun around and shot toward Su-Yu. Su-Yu was somewhat helpless, as he wasn't clear about their identities. However, he could still discern that they weren't otherworldly people. He had just come over to greet them and ask them about the matter of entering the giant peak. However, He didn't expect that a beautiful girl would suddenly rush forward and throw a cultivation technique at him. Since Su Yu was aware that it was just a misunderstanding, he wouldn't deal a heavy blow to her. A water-type cultivation technique? Su Yu muttered inwardly. It was far inferior to Xia Jingyu's. Xia Jingyu was proficient in several hundred water-type cultivation techniques, and most of them were more advanced than years flow like water. It's not bad. Su Yu chuckled and suppressed his cultivation on purpose. He then released the level 1 fairy realm's vital energy and turned it into a shield in front of him. Splutter! When the petals hit the shield, a muffled sound echoed out as they shattered and turned into numerous raindrops. It seemed like rain was falling on a lotus. It seemed like Su Yu had easily blocked it. However, Ling Er's eyes were filled with craftiness. Humph! Do you think that my immortal level cultivation technique is so easy to block? Su Yu was surprised. It was at this moment that many threads, which couldn't be seen by the naked eye, appeared among the shattered petals. These threads connected all of the raindrops together. In other words, the raindrops were just used to deceive people, while the true power of the technique lay in the hidden threads. The silk threads unknowingly dispersed and formed a large net. By the time Su Yu came to his senses, the net had already taken shape and caught him by surprise. All of a sudden, Su Yu was like a turtle trapped in a jar. Just after this, Ling Er flew over and took out a small green sword from her waist. She then placed it against Su Yu's neck and said proudly, "Hey, didn't I tell you? You are just a lad trying to scare people. You are so weak, yet you still dared to come here and scare me." Su Yu didn't know whether he should laugh or cry. This net was made of vital energy, and its power depended on the purity of Ling Er's spiritual energy. With his cultivation, he could easily shatter the net at any time if he wanted to. He just didn't want any more misunderstandings to occur, so he just sat there and waited for his death. Su Yu was left speechless by the little beauty's words, but he couldn't help but laugh. He wasn't just trying to scare them. They were just hiding somewhere, and Su Yu hadn't noticed them before he had descended on the mountain. "Hall Master, how is it?" When Ing Ching saw that Su Yu had been easily subdued by Ling Er, he couldn't help but relax. At this moment, the middle-aged Hall Master was holding a white jade plate in his hand. A dark red color could be faintly seen on it, and it was flickering. There's a reaction, which means that he's an otherworldly person. Ling Er let him go. The middle-aged Hall Master put away the jade plate and examined Su Yu. Ling Er clenched her hand and collected the net. She then curled her lips and said, "Lad, you should properly cultivate your power. The continent is quite chaotic now, and if you are discovered by the otherworldly experts with your meager power, you will surely meet the King of Hell." Su Yu cupped his fists at her with a faint smile and said, "I will bear in mind your advice." Ling Er rolled her eyes at him and said, "You still have the face to smile? Really, you're just another guy with no ambition." Ling Er shook her head. She didn't want to look at Su Yu anymore. "Little brother, please forgive me for offending you." The middle-aged Hall Master cupped his fists at him and apologized. "It's fine, I understand." Su Yu waved his hand at him and smiled. The middle-aged Hall Master's eyes flickered. "Little brother, may I know what you are doing here? The otherworldly army is in front of us, and if you are discovered and recognized as a member of the Empire of Darkness, your end will be quite dangerous. In the past 3 years, all of the Empire of Darkness's people who fell into the otherworldly realm were tortured to death. If the otherworldly people wanted to invade the Empire of Darkness, they could only interrogate the captive. The other faction's captives might not be in any danger, but the captives here were in grave danger. Su Yu's eyes flickered as he wondered, why does this person know so much about the Empire of Darkness's situation? It seems like he's most likely a member of the Empire of Darkness. Moreover, since he was hiding here, it was likely that he wanted to return to the Empire of Darkness. If he followed them, it wouldn't be difficult for him to enter the giant peak. I escaped from the Northern Continent's 100 Territories Alliance, and I sought shelter with a distant relative of the Empire of Darkness. I didn't expect that the Empire of Darkness's situation would be so grave, and I wanted to enter it, but I didn't have any way to do so. So you made up a lie." Upon hearing this, the middle-aged hall master sighed and said, "So, you escaped from the northern continent. It's no wonder that you didn't know how dangerous it is to come here." Although he said this, his eyes flickered. It was obvious that he didn't believe Su Yu's words. "Little brother, you should quickly leave this place. This place is too dangerous, so you shouldn't stay here for long." The middle-aged hall master cupped his fists at Su Yu and bid him farewell. He then waved his hand at Linger and Ing Ching to follow him. Su Yu thought to himself, "Are they really on guard against me? They are really vigilant, as I have already suppressed my cultivation and lowered my threat level to the lowest possible level." As Su Yu looked at them leaving, he wondered, "How can I sneak into their group?" After the middle-aged hall master had walked 1,000 meters away, Ing Cheng's eyes lit up and he said, "Hall master, it seems like this lad wants to follow us into the Empire of Darkness." Linger blinked her eyes and snorted. "Humph, it turns out that this lad still has such an idea in mind." The middle-aged hall master nodded slightly. "Yes, I heard it clearly, so I will take you and leave immediately. Although he doesn't pose any threat to us, if we rashly bring him back to the Empire of Darkness's giant peak, and if he turns out to be an otherworldly spy, we won't be able to bear such a responsibility." Ing Ching agreed with him, then said, "Spies bribed by the otherworldly world aren't anything new, so it's better for us to avoid unnecessary trouble." Since all three of them had such thoughts, Su Yu's plan had failed. "Wait. Don't go any further." All of a sudden, the middle-aged hall master came to a stop, while his expression changed drastically. A faintly discernible aura, which was visible to the naked eye, had entered his nostrils. Linger and Ing Ching immediately started weaving signs with their hands, while a similar scene occurred. It seemed like they were able to absorb the unique aura in the air through their noses. "It's awful. We have been discovered by someone, and a group of otherworldly experts is rushing over. Quickly run." The middle-aged hall master made a prompt decision, then turned around and fled. Linger and Ing Cheng's expressions also changed drastically. They were intelligence agents, and such a situation was common, so they both reacted quickly. The direction in which the three of them were fleeing happened to be where Su Yu was. "Ing Ching, take him with you," the middle-aged hall master shouted in a deep voice. Ing Cheng was quite displeased by this, as bringing along a burden at such a critical moment was really bad. However, since the hall master had given him an order, he didn't dare to just leave Su Yu here to die. So, he grabbed Su Yu's shoulder and said, "If you don't want to die, then don't move." Chapter 662. Their cultivations were not very high, but their movement techniques had been specially trained, so they were extremely fast, at least one level higher than their peers. In the blink of an eye, Su Yu had been brought hundreds of miles away by them, leaving the people who were chasing after him behind. After flying for a while and confirming that it was safe, the three of them landed by a lake. "Let's stop. We should be safe now." The middle-aged hall master led everyone to stop and rest by the lake. Whoosh! Both Linger and Ing Ching were a little tired. Although their movement techniques were fast, they had consumed a lot of energy. "Father, what's going on? How did the otherworldly people know of our existence? Could it be that we have been exposed?" Linger was very confused. The enemy had pounced on them so precisely, which meant that they knew exactly where they were. If not for their amazing senses, they would have been killed by now. The middle-aged hall master was lost in thought and did not reply. "Do you still need to ask? We have been hiding so well, so how could our location have been exposed? Apart from a reckless person who stood on the mountain, there is no other possibility." Ing Ching put Su Yu down and looked at him with dissatisfaction. Linger came to her senses and angrily turned her head to glare at Su Yu. "I was wondering why it was you. Su Yu had stood on the mountain without concealing himself. Although they were quite far away, there was no guarantee that the otherworldly people were not proficient in vision technique. It was very likely that Su Yu had exposed himself and implicated them. Su Yu was left speechless by this. Indeed, he didn't try to hide himself like the others, but his whole body was emitting a natural aura, and he had merged with his surroundings. Even if the otherworldly people saw him, they would just treat him as a natural scenery, and they wouldn't notice him. This was also why the three of them had not detected Su Yu's aura even though they were so close. Therefore, it was not Su Yu who had been exposed. It's not him. The middle-aged hall master shook his head without hesitation. With his ability to conceal his aura, we could not even detect his existence at such a close distance, let alone the enemy who was hundreds of miles away. It must be our own fault. The one who was implicated is this little brother. The middle-aged hall master cupped his fist. I'm sorry, little brother. I've implicated you. I think our whereabouts have probably been exposed by the enemy. Linger glanced at Su Yu suspiciously. She didn't believe that she would be exposed. Clan leader, this is a top-secret mission arranged by the Seven Lords' Palace. Only the Seven Lords' Palace knows our whereabouts. Even if the Empire of Darkness has a spy, it is impossible for them to know our exact location. Could it be that the spy is in the Seven Lords' Palace? I think the biggest problem is still this kid. Ying Qing squinted his eyes and stared at Su Yu, not hiding his suspicion. In the face of their doubtful gazes, Su Yu shrugged his shoulders and looked around vigilantly. All of a sudden, he raised his brows and said, I'm afraid that now is not the time to discuss whether I am a traitor or not. Don't try to change the topic. You are the traitor. Ying Qing seemed to have seen through Su Yu's inner thoughts, and as he touched the dagger at his waist, his murderous aura gradually revealed itself. Stop. Suddenly, the middle-aged hall master's tone turned solemn. He shouted in a low voice, his complexion somewhat unsightly. He's right. We don't have time to waste. We're surrounded. Surround? When? Both Linger and Ying Qing were shocked. How could the enemy have caught up with them so quickly and surrounded them? The two of them immediately used their aura observing technique. Wisps of faintly discernible auras entered their noses intermittently. After a long while, both of their expressions became unsightly. Oh no, we're really surrounded. Judging from the number of auras, there are at least 30 people, all of whom are 2 crystals half-fairy realm. No, it seems like there are even 3 crystals half-fairy realm auras scattered in all directions. This is a well-planned ambush. Ying Qing's expression changed drastically. At this moment, Su Yu's suspicions had been cleared. Such an ambush was obviously well-planned. Moreover, Su Yu had only known them for a short while. Don't say anything else. Quickly escape with him. The middle-aged hall master's expression became gloomy as he looked in the direction where the enemy seemed to be the weakest. Ying Qing's expression became gloomy. Clan leader, we can't even protect ourselves, let alone bring him along. Linger was also very hesitant. They had fallen into an ambush, and they really didn't have the strength to protect another person. There were 32 crystals half-fairy realm experts, as well as a 3 crystals half-fairy realm expert in hiding. Even if they were entangled by just one of the 2 crystals half-fairy realm experts for a short while, they would all be annihilated. Shut up. He was implicated by us, so how could we abandon him? Bring him along and set off immediately. The middle-aged hall master reprimanded them as he tapped the ground with the tip of his foot and flew away. Ying Qing clenched his teeth and glared at Su Yu with hatred. Behave yourself. If you dare to affect me in the slightest, I will kill you immediately. After he finished speaking, he grabbed Su Yu and fled after the middle-aged hall master. After they had flown for 10 miles, they saw some indistinct figures hidden among the dense clouds. Their ambush was unimaginable. It was as if they had been able to accurately pinpoint their exact location, which was why they had been able to perfectly surround them. Fortunately, the three of them, especially the middle-aged hall master's aura-observing technique, were able to detect the enemy's weak point. There were 3 2-crystals half-fairy realm experts blocking their way. With the middle-aged hall master, a 3-crystals half-fairy realm expert, they could easily break through their defenses. "Open!" the middle-aged hall master shouted loudly. His loud and clear voice contained a boundless power that could paralyze one's body. It was a soundwave cultivation technique. The dense clouds dispersed, revealing the 3 figures hidden within. Under the influence of the soundwave cultivation technique, the 3 of them became stiff. Now, the middle-aged hall master led Su Yu and the others through the encirclement and into the boundless sky. Swoosh! At that moment the encirclement shrank rapidly. A young scholar wearing a white robe had an angry look on his face. They still managed to escape. He was bewildered. What's going on? How did they suddenly detect the ambush? Did something happen? Sir, there is something that I don't know whether I should say or not. His confidant, who was standing behind him, revealed a puzzled look. Speak. The white-robed scholar was furious and replied with a displeased expression. The confidant pondered for a moment before asking, "Sir, did you notice that silver-haired youth?" "Silver-haired youth? Which one?" The white-robed scholar furrowed his brows. His attention had been focused on the 3 important people, so he hadn't paid attention to the silver-haired youth. The confidant carefully looked at the white-robed scholar's expression, then said in an uncertain tone, "I don't know if it's just my imagination, but why do I feel like that silver-haired youth is somewhat familiar? It seems like he is similar to the rumored Jinlong genius of the Central Prefecture's Black Shadow Guards, Su Yu? They have the same silver-haired youth, the same age, and the same appearance. However, this person is a mysterious existence who can compete with a divine master. So, how could he be with 3 insignificant people?" Unknowingly, the expression of the white-robed scholar had changed from impatience to solemnity. The speaker didn't mean it, but the listener did. Chapter 663. The confidant wasn't the only one who had noticed the silver-haired youth. "You were the only one who misjudged him, but not everyone else," the white-robed scholar said in a deep voice. The white-robed scholar said in a low voice. He could sense the changes in the expressions of the people around him. His heart fiercely pounded, and a fine layer of cold sweat appeared on his forehead. Su Yu's name was quite famous among the Black Shadow Guards, and the battle prowess displayed by this mysterious genius of the Jinlong continent was really frightening. As he recalled how he had almost surrounded this terrifying existence, his heart couldn't help but pound. At this moment, he finally understood why their ambush had been so easily seen through. It was all because of the existence of this mysterious genius. "Sir, there is one more thing. When I used my eye technique to observe just now, it seems like this silver-haired youth listens to those 3 nobodies. Is he really the person in the rumors?" The confidant voiced his doubts once again. The corners of the white-robed scholar's mouth twitched. "I'm afraid that he didn't reveal his identity, and that's why those 3 nobodies dared to be so impudent. I really don't know what will happen to them if they offend this guy. Sir, should we continue to chase after him?" The confidant also felt like he had just escaped from the gates of hell, so he braced himself and asked. The white-robed scholar glared at him. "Are you going to chase after him, or should I?" The confidant was embarrassed, but he understood tacitly. "Then, what did you see just now?" The white-robed scholar's eyes flickered with a cold light. If news of him letting the target escape was spread, the higher-ups wouldn't ask why, but would punish him directly. The confidant rolled his eyes. "The target was rescued by someone, and we didn't catch up with him." "Who rescued him?" the white-robed scholar asked coldly. The confidant replied seriously, "We didn't see it." At this moment, the white-robed scholar revealed a faint smile. "That's a good answer. The rest of you should know how to answer, right?" "Yes, sir," the rest of the people replied. They also didn't want to be accused of letting the enemy escape, so they naturally knew what to do. Good, retreat. Go back and report. The white-robed scholar waved his hand. Not only did he not chase after them, but he also led his people to quickly retreat. The middle-aged hall master and the other two people, who hadn't flown far, couldn't help but be dumbfounded. Father, did I see it wrong? They unexpectedly retreated. Linger's eyes were as wide as saucers, and her face was filled with disbelief. Cheng also felt that it was unbelievable. What happened to the enemy? Why did they suddenly retreat? In fact, it wasn't just them. Even the middle-aged hall master found this inconceivable. Strange, could it be that the enemy's target isn't us, so they gave up on chasing us? The three of them were already prepared to flee for their lives, but the enemy had actually retreated so easily. How strange. Don't be careless. Let's leave this place first, the middle-aged hall master said vigilantly. 2 hours. In a quiet forest far away from the Empire of Darkness. As night fell, a group of people gathered around the bonfire and roasted a few small mountain beasts. The fragrance refreshed the mind and greatly increased one's appetite. Our luck is really good today. Nibbling on the delicious food, Ling Er's face was filled with joy and satisfaction. To be able to escape from that kind of encirclement was truly a blessing from the heavens. It's Ling Er who brought us good luck. Cheng cut off a deer's leg and handed it to Ling Er. Ling Er shook the wild boar hoof in her hand, which she had not finished eating, to show her refusal. Isn't that so? As long as I'm here, I guarantee that you'll be safe. Don't you think so, father? However, Ling Er discovered that the middle-aged hall master's brows were furrowed, and he was looking at the bonfire, lost in his thoughts. Father, what are you thinking about? Ling Er interrupted the middle-aged hall master's thoughts. When the middle-aged hall master came back to his senses, he furrowed his brows and said, I'm thinking about how we should return to the Empire of Darkness. Judging from today's situation, we should have already been targeted by the otherworldly army. If we want to go back, it will be more dangerous than usual. When he said this, Ling Er and Cheng's relaxed mood became heavy. They had managed to escape, but it would be extremely difficult for them to return to the Empire of Darkness. Sigh. The wild boar hoof in Ling Er's mouth instantly became tasteless, and she furrowed her brows. She was quite vexed. Among the three of them, only Su Yu wore a calm expression. He was leaning against a tree, meditating and cultivating. When the middle-aged hall master saw this, he couldn't help but praise him inwardly. Even in such a situation, he still had the heart to cultivate. Moreover, he still had a calm temperament, and he was also quite hard-working. However, in the eyes of the vexed Linger, it was a different feeling. Hey, can't you think of a solution? Don't you think that it's selfish of you to only care about your own cultivation? Ling Er was quite merciless. Su Yu slowly opened his eyes. He had been taking some time to consolidate his 3 crystals half-fairy realm cultivation. When he heard Ling Er's shout, he stopped cultivating and said with a faint smile, While I was cultivating, you were also eating. So, why am I being selfish? Aren't you the same? Ling Er had just wanted to vent her anger, so she didn't expect that Su Yu would dare to talk back to her. What did you just say? How can you speak like that? Before Ling Er could retort, Cheng was infuriated, and he flung the deer leg in his hand at the ground. He didn't even try to hide the anger on his face. If it wasn't for us, you would have already become a corpse. So, can't you show us some respect? If I had known that you were such a person, I wouldn't have saved you. Su Yu just smiled and didn't reply. His expression didn't calm Cheng down. Instead, it made him even angrier. Look at your disapproving expression. Looks like I've really saved an ungrateful wretch. Now that you are safe, you can get lost. We don't want to see you ever again. Ling Er, who was beside him, furrowed her brows. She had just talked back to Su Yu, which meant that Cheng was trying to curry favor with him. As she looked at Ing Cheng's majestic appearance out of the corner of her eye, she curled her lips in disdain. Enough! The middle-aged hall master shouted in a deep voice. What's so impressive about shouting at someone weaker than you? If you are really capable, then go and shout at the otherworldly experts. Ing Cheng's neck shrank back as his face became hot. When he was surrounded by the otherworldly experts, his face had turned pale and he didn't even dare to breathe loudly. So, how could he shout at them? If it wasn't for his warning, we wouldn't even have realized that we were ambushed. It's fine if you didn't thank us, but why are you mocking us? When the middle-aged hall master lost his temper, he was quite imposing, and the two of them didn't dare to retort. Little brother, please forgive them for their ignorance. The middle-aged hall master cupped his fists at Suyu. Suyu waved his hand at him and said, You don't need to worry about them. Let's talk about proper business. Hall master, have you thought of a way to return to the Empire of Darkness? The middle-aged hall master hesitated for a moment before he replied, I do have a way, but it's quite risky. If you aren't afraid of taking risks, then you can try it with us, but I can't guarantee whether it will succeed or not. When he finished speaking, Ling Er said, What? Father, you want to take him with you? Even in the past, it would be extremely difficult for us to pass through the enemy's blockade. Wouldn't it be even more difficult for us to take another person with us in our current situation? Ing Cheng was also strongly opposed to it, but after being reprimanded, he didn't dare to voice it out. He just glared at Suyu, as if he was implying that Suyu should get lost. Otherwise, he wouldn't be polite to him. Chapter 664. Suyu turned a deaf ear to their reactions. Thank you for your help, Clan Master. How should I address you? The middle-aged hall master slightly nodded his head. I'm just giving you a ride as a way to repay you for what you did just now. After entering the mountain peak, we have nothing to do with each other. Furthermore, the three of us have special statuses, so it's inconvenient for us to reveal our identities. Of course, we won't ask about your identity either. After entering the city, we'll immediately part ways. Suyu couldn't have asked for more, so he happily nodded his head. Father, are you really going to? Linger was anxious. She couldn't tolerate Suyu at all. Ing Cheng also winked at him in dissatisfaction. I've already made up my mind. The middle-aged hall master glanced at the two of them and said, We'll rest for half a day. We'll depart after nightfall. Although Linger and Ing Cheng were anxious, they couldn't disobey her. They could only glare at Suyu and say, If you dare to implicate us, I won't forgive you. In response, Suyu shrugged his shoulders and began to rest, waiting for the operation to begin. The sun was setting in the west. Alright, get ready to move. Ling Ing Cheng, check if your invisibility cloaks are intact. The middle-aged hall master shouted. Then, he took out a transparent cloak that was as thin as a cicada's wings. Ling and Ing Cheng also took out the same cloak and carefully inspected every inch of it. No problem, we can set off now. After confirming that there were no problems, the two of them took a deep breath and began to look nervous. The middle-aged hall master nodded. All right. Once you're 30 kilometers away, immediately put on the invisibility cloak. Little brother, you can share the cloak with me for the time being. Suyu had no intention of rejecting him, so he nodded in agreement. 2 hours later, 15 miles away from the Empire of Darkness. Ling Ing Cheng, follow me closely. If any mishap occurs, I will immediately come to your rescue. The middle-aged hall master transmitted his voice to them in a low voice, while he lifted his cloak and covered both him and Suyu. Ing Cheng was on the far left side, while the middle-aged hall master was in the middle. Suyu was on the right side of the middle-aged hall master, while Linger was on Suyu's right side. The four of them stood shoulder to shoulder, hugging each other tightly. In the blink of an eye, the four figures disappeared into the darkness. Bastard, stay away from this great ant! Just as he took a few steps, Ling shouted in a flirtatious manner. She was on Suyu's right side, and as they walked side by side, It was inevitable that they would bump into each other. This made her extremely sensitive and uncomfortable. Suyu shrugged his shoulders helplessly. "You're the one who's rubbing against me, aren't you? If you don't like it, you can stay away. I don't mind." Ling gritted her teeth and said fiercely, "You bastard! I'll deal with you later." How could she leave her father's side? If something happened, her father wouldn't even be able to help her in time. Suyu just smiled and didn't speak. He didn't know that Ing Cheng's gaze was ice-cold. "Be quiet, let's move," the middle-aged hall master said in a low voice. While Ling was filled with anger, the four of them stepped out. Their true qi and spiritual qi were completely restrained, and their auras were completely restrained. Under the curtain of the night, they were as transparent as air and could not be detected at all. Therefore, they moved very slowly on foot. A distance of 30 kilometers could be covered in a few breaths, but it took 6 hours. Along the way, he was extremely cautious and alert. Finally, the giant peak was in sight, and the experts from the other world that filled the sky were right in front of them. There was an otherworldly expert hidden every 10 meters. They were either on a tree, in a stone's crevice, or in a bush. In short, they were everywhere. If they made even the slightest noise, they would surely alarm the hidden experts, which would then alarm everyone else. At that time, they would be surrounded by several hundred people, and they would be helpless. It wasn't just Ling and Ing Ching who were nervous, but even the middle-aged hall master became nervous. Suyu noticed that his breathing had sped up slightly. At the same time, Ling moved closer to Suyu and pressed her arm against his. She didn't notice anything amiss. This was a moment of life and death. The middle-aged hall master clenched his teeth and widened his eyes. He was sniffing the air unceasingly as he used his aura observation technique to observe the enemy's situation. The middle-aged hall master clenched his teeth and took the first step. Suyu could feel that this step was extremely difficult and heavy, as if it was filled with lead. Suyu revealed a faint smile as he followed the middle-aged hall master. Ling and Ing Ching followed him closely. They didn't even dare to breathe loudly. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, it seemed like they were only 2 or 3 miles away from each other, but they were like a mountain made of knives. They had to observe their surroundings vigilantly with every step they took. Creak! All of a sudden, the 3 of them stopped in their tracks and felt their blood run cold. They had just passed by a tree when an otherworldly person suddenly jumped down from it. His left foot stepped on the corner of Ling cloak, causing a creaking sound to echo out. The middle-aged hall master and Ing Cheng's hearts jumped to their throats when they heard this sound. Their eyes narrowed and their expressions changed drastically. They didn't dare to move as they looked at the person who had just fallen down. Well, the person who had just fallen down was a yellow-robed 2 crystals half-fairy realm person. He was startled and doubtfully moved his foot away. There wasn't anything strange on the pitch-black ground. Then, he looked at the soles of his feet, but he didn't find anything strange either. Doubt appeared in his eyes as he stroked his chin. After a short while, he shook his head and looked around before he took off his pants and started watering the tree. Ling face turned pale with fright, and her heart started beating crazily. Her palms were filled with sweat. Suyu's arm, which was pressed against his arm, was completely wet. Her whole body felt weak, and she couldn't help but stretch out her arm to grab Suyu's wrist to steady her body. It was a false alarm. The middle-aged hall master and Ing Ching were scared to death. This scare made them even more careful, and every step they took was even more difficult. After walking for 2 to 3 miles, it took them most of the night. The sky was turning white and dawn was about to break. However, the arduous journey was finally completed and they arrived at the foot of the mountain. Just as Suyu had expected, there was indeed an entrance outside the mountain peak. However, there were 9 shining yellow light balls. The light ball had an extremely strong isolating power, and Suyu also sensed a faint dangerous aura. He believed that if he recklessly barged into it, he would end up in a terrible state. Phew, Ling let out a long breath. We're finally safe, Ling muttered in a low voice. Suddenly, she realized that her palm had grabbed onto Su Yu's arm, and it had been grabbing onto him for most of the night. This discovery almost caused her to cry out in alarm. She withdrew her hand as if she had been electrocuted. Her face was flushed, and she glared at Su Yu fiercely. You took advantage of me. Su Yu didn't know whether to laugh or to cry. Eldest miss, it was you who grabbed my hand, so you took advantage of me. No matter how you look at it, I am the one who should be taking advantage of you. You. Linger was driven mad. As she recalled how she had been intimate with this man for a whole night, goosebumps appeared all over her body. I will deal with you when we get back. Linger distanced herself from him and glared at Su Yu. When the middle-aged hall master heard their bickering, he shook his head helplessly. He didn't want to bother with them, so he took out an emerald ball. It seemed like this ball came from the same source as the 9 restrictions at the entrance, as their auras were quite similar. Su Yu could tell with a single glance that this ball was the key to entering the mountain peak. Only by holding this treasure would they be able to safely enter the mountain peak without being repelled by the 9 restrictions. Moreover, if there was only one ball, then the only way for the 4 of them to enter it at the same time was if their bodies were in close contact with each other. As expected, the middle-aged hall master held the pearl in his mouth and held Ing Cheng's arm with his left hand and Su Yu's arm with his right hand. He then gave Su Yu a meaningful glance, signaling him to hold Linger's arm. Su Yu understood what he meant, so he extended his hand and held Linger's arm. When Linger suddenly noticed that Su Yu was trying to grab her, she realized that they were about to enter the mountain peak. However, after what had just happened, she instinctively dodged him and muttered, I don't want you to hold me. I will go behind my father. As she spoke, she started moving toward the middle-aged hall master's back. However, at such a crucial moment, you finally found it. I have been waiting for you here for a long time. Suddenly, a cold laugh rang out from behind Ling without any warning. My feeling was not wrong. I have indeed stepped on something incredible. The middle-aged hall master and the other 2 people turned their heads around to look, but there was no one there. However, when they looked at the corner of Linger's cloak, their pupils couldn't help but contract, as they saw that there was an obvious footprint on the corner of Linger's cloak. If Linger hadn't moved, her footprint would have fused with the ground, making it difficult to discern it. However, if she moved slightly, she would be able to clearly see it. The middle-aged hall master was really careful, but he didn't expect that their journey would take several hours longer than usual. It was already daybreak. As such, Linger's tracks were exposed. Swoosh! 3 feet behind Linger, a ripple suddenly appeared in the empty space. A transparent cloak was lifted, revealing a yellow figure. It was the yellow-robed youth, who had come down from the tree to relieve them. His cultivation was at the 2 crystals half-fairy realm. Show yourself. After the yellow-robed youth appeared, his hand moved as fast as lightning as he tried to grab Linger. Linger was extremely shocked, and her reaction was slightly slow. Although she dodged to the side, the cloak on her body was torn off. Linger let out a sharp cry, her face filled with panic. She was a 1 crystal half-fairy, so how could she be a match for a 2 crystals half-fairy realm? A little beauty at that? What a surprise! The yellow-robed youth's eyes were filled with amazement as he laughed evilly. He took a step forward with his left foot, and his demonic claw grabbed Linger's shoulder mercilessly. His eyes were filled with the impulsiveness and playfulness of a wild beast. Linger retreated in panic, but how could she possibly dodge a 2 crystals half-fairy realm's attack? Chapter 665. Ling. As his daughter's life was in danger, how could the middle-aged hall master remain calm? His body moved, and the invisibility cloak swayed along with him, revealing some traces of his body. As expected, there are still people hiding here. Just as he made his move, 2 strong gusts of wind suddenly attacked him from the side. 2 invisibility cloaks appeared 20 feet away, and 2 black figures dashed out from within. Their auras were quite strong, and they were only weaker than fairies. They were both 3 crystals half fairies. There was still someone lying in ambush. The middle-aged hall master was startled, but he was still the intelligence division's hall master, so he reacted quickly. He immediately thrust his palms forward, and the vital energy in his palms formed a vortex, which had a strong repelling power. Bang! 2 muffled sounds echoed as the middle-aged hall master blocked the 2 palms, and the repelling power neutralized most of their attacks. "Let go!" The 3 crystals half fairies shouted angrily. They were shocked to discover that the person's vital energy was quite strange. Just a moment ago, it had a strong repelling power, but now it had a strong suction power, which was holding them firmly in place. "Ing Cheng! Hurry up and save Ling!" The middle-aged hall master had stalled them to give Ing Cheng an opportunity to attack. Otherwise, even if the 3 crystals half fairies were free, Ing Cheng wouldn't be able to deal with them. Ing Cheng was quite anxious, and when he saw the 3 crystals half fairies being restrained, he was about to attack. However, he suddenly realized something and stopped. His forehead was covered with cold sweat, and his eyes were filled with fright as he looked around at the empty surroundings. Since the enemy could ambush 2 waves of people, couldn't they also ambush a 3rd wave? "Ing Cheng, what are you doing? Why aren't you attacking?" The middle-aged hall master clenched his teeth, and his face became flushed. His arms emitted a cracking sound, and it seemed like he was struggling. Ing Cheng looked on helplessly as Ling was about to be grabbed by the yellow-clothed youth. He was so scared that he didn't dare to take another step forward. In the end, he turned around and stood in his place, not daring to move in case someone saw through him. "Ing Cheng, you!" The middle-aged hall master realized that Ing Cheng had given up on Ling because he wanted to protect himself. With a helpless scream, Ling shoulder was grabbed by the yellow-robed youth. "Little beauty, hee." The yellow-robed young man laughed sinisterly. He exerted strength in his elbow and pulled her back. The strange thing was, even with his strength, he could not move Ling at all. Who is holding my wrist? Come out!" The yellow-robed youth's complexion suddenly stiffened, and he shouted in a low voice. Visible to the naked eye, the markings of 5 fingers appeared on the skin of his wrist. What was holding on to him? There was no one around, which meant that this person was also invisible. "Brother Ing Cheng, save me!" Ling was overjoyed and cried tears of joy. However, the slightly unfamiliar voice made her smile stop abruptly. "Ing Cheng? He doesn't seem to be ready to make a move, so I have no choice but to overestimate myself and make a move." The voice wasn't Brother Ing Cheng, but Su Yu. Shortly after, the invisibility cloak was lifted, and Su Yu's figure was revealed. His long silver hair fluttered in the wind, and it covered half of his face. However, it couldn't cover his eyes, which were as deep as the starry sky, nor could it cover his inhumanly handsome face. At this moment, he had one hand behind his back, while his other hand was casually placed on the yellow-robed youth's wrist. Su Yu's posture, fluttering clothes, long silver hair, and charming smile seemed to have been frozen in time at this moment. It was an extremely beautiful sight. At this moment, he gave the middle-aged hall master and the other 2 people the feeling that he was a god who had descended from the heavens. He was elegant and handsome, yet powerful and terrifying, as well as possessed boundless power. "Go!" As he slightly flipped his wrist, the yellow-robed youth let out a miserable howl as he was flung several hundred meters away like a ragged sack. He landed on a giant boulder. The yellow-robed youth's chest exploded, and his eyes quickly dimmed. His body went limp and he took his last breath. The giant boulder behind him remained in a stalemate for a moment before it turned into powder, burying the corpse beneath it. A 2 crystals half-fairy realm expert had been killed with a wave of his sleeve. Everything had happened in just a few breaths' time. Everyone was startled when they witnessed such a scene. Regardless of whether they were friends or foes, they were all shocked. Linger's eyes became absent-minded as she looked at the fairy-like man with fluttering silver hair in front of her. At this moment, she really felt like he was a silver-haired fairy from the ancient legends. He was noble, mysterious, powerful, and had an extraordinary temperament. He didn't belong to the mortal world. An indescribable feeling of inferiority welled up in her heart. She wasn't the only one who felt this feeling of inferiority. Everyone could feel the peerless demeanor of a god. This person should only exist in the heavens, not in the mortal world. You. Who are you? The Three Crystals half-fairy realm expert, who was attacking the middle-aged hall master, came back to his senses and asked uneasily. Suyu clasped his hands behind his back and wore a faint smile as he glanced at the void to his right. In his eyes, a level 1 fairy realm expert, who had been lying in ambush, seemed to have recognized Suyu and fled for his life. Even the inspector has fled, so why are you still here? Suyu clasped his hands behind his back and walked toward them as if he was taking a stroll in the park. As he moved, the wind blew and his clothes fluttered. His silver hair fluttered in front of his forehead and fell to the sides of his face, revealing a handsome face with a faint smile on it. A formless oppressive aura emanated from him, causing the palms of the Three Crystals half-fairy realm experts to shiver. Retreat. The two of them made a prompt decision, as they felt like Suyu's first step was stepping on their chests. If they waited for him to take another step, it would be too late for them to escape. Suyu revealed a faint smile and didn't chase after them. Instead, he walked toward the middle-aged hall master and asked, "Were you injured?" Although it was just an ordinary question, it carried great weight in the middle-aged hall master's ears. It was unknown whether it was because he was wary of Suyu or because he was intimidated by Suyu's imposing aura, but he subconsciously took several steps back and looked at Suyu with a frightened gaze. The middle-aged hall master had a feeling that the person standing in front of him wasn't a nameless nobody, but a majestic existence that could shake the heavens and earth. "Hall master, were you injured?" Suyu asked with a faint smile. The middle-aged hall master only came back to his senses after being asked twice, so he replied hurriedly, "Oh, I'm fine. I'm fine." The shrewd middle-aged hall master was already shocked to the point that he couldn't speak coherently. "Since you're fine, let's immediately enter the mountain. There are too many of them, and I won't be able to deal with them all," Suyu reminded him. If several hundred people attacked him at the same time, Suyu might not be able to escape even if he used all of his technique. So, it would be better for him to leave as soon as possible. The middle-aged hall master's whole body quivered when he heard this, and he took out the pearl once again. "Grab me!" Although he said this, he still took the initiative to step forward and grab Suyu's arm. Swoosh! At this moment, Ing Cheng, who had just escaped from danger, took off his cloak. His face was still pale, and he grabbed the middle-aged hall master's other arm. The middle-aged hall master looked at him coldly, as if to tell him that he would deal with him later. Your Excellency, please grab my daughter. We will immediately enter the mountain." The middle-aged hall master's tone had changed. Suyu nodded calmly, then turned his head and smiled at Linger. "Miss Linger, are you all right?" As he spoke, he extended his hand. Linger wasn't unfamiliar with such a smile, but at this moment it seemed like it possessed a mysterious power, which made it seem even more beautiful. Linger was startled for a moment, and her heart started beating faster. She was mesmerized by it. "Go. Capture him. He's—" The eyes of the fairy realm inspector, who had just escaped from the crowd, were filled with fear. His voice was filled with fright as he shouted at the top of his lungs. As he gave the order, all of the otherworldly experts started moving and surged forward like a tide. When Suyu saw that Linger was still in a daze even at such a crucial moment, he couldn't help but furrow his brows. Linger's temperament is really bad. She's so distracted at such a crucial moment. She should really thank her powerful father for protecting her. I'm sorry for offending you. Suyu had no choice but to use his palm to suck Linger's energy. Suyu reached out and grabbed her shoulder. His 5 fingers intertwined and held her firmly. Just after that, Suyu and the middle-aged hall master entered the pearl. When they came into contact with each other, the pearl in the middle-aged hall master's mouth emitted a faint light, which engulfed his whole body. Moreover, it also spread to the people he had implicated. Cheng, Suyu, and Linger were all engulfed by the light. When they entered the pearl, the light on their bodies fused with the pearl without any obstructions. After they passed through 9 pearls, a clamor suddenly resounded through Suyu's earphones. Suyu, who was completely unprepared, couldn't help but feel a sharp pain in his ears. As his soul eyes swept over the area, he saw that there were so many people that they seemed like a sea. They had directly entered the bustling city. Moreover, they were in a plaza at the center of the bustling city. There were 3 layers of guards around the plaza, each one emitting a powerful aura. Even the weakest among them was at the 2 crystals half-fairy realm. In fact, there were even 2 3 crystals half-fairy realm guards. Swoosh! The moment they appeared, the sound of numerous chains could be heard. 9 chains shot out from all directions, wrapping around Suyu and the rest of them tightly. The materials of the chains were extraordinary. At least, Suyu could tell that they were even sturdier than the Heavenly Law Alliance's battleships. Unless the 5th Saint Master personally attacked them, no one would be able to break them. Suyu wasn't unfamiliar with such a formation. After all, the Heavenly Law Alliance's transportation exit was also guarded by the Heavenly Law Alliance's guards. The only difference was that the Empire of Darkness's formation was 10 times that of the Heavenly Law Alliance's. Intelligence Division's Hall Master, Ling Jianlu, has returned to report. The middle-aged Hall Master took out a shining golden badge from his sleeves. Not only was it made of a special material, but it also contained a special aura that couldn't be replicated. The 2 3 crystals half-fairy realm guards first looked at Ling Jianliu's face before grabbing the badge to inspect it. Both the person and the badge are real. We will report to the commander. One of the 3 crystals half-fairy realm guards immediately flew away and passed on the message. Suyu praised them inwardly. Entering the peak required a person, a badge, and the commander's approval. Although it was complicated, it guaranteed absolute safety. The fact that the Empire of Darkness had persisted for such a long time without any flaws was mainly due to the 9 balls formation and their vigilance. It was worth learning from the Heavenly Law Alliance. After a long while, the light suddenly dimmed. 3 phoenix-like birds were pulling a carriage, which was carved with a beast's head, as they slowly flew over. Wherever they passed, the passers-by would make way for them and look at them with respectful gazes. They didn't feel that the carriage, which occupied 1/3 of the sky, would affect them. They were all extremely respectful towards the carriage, or rather, the people within it. The middle-aged hall master didn't look surprised, but Suyu could sense that he was frowning slightly, as well as a faintly discernible look of worry in the depths of his eyes. "Shouldn't you put Linger down first?" A hostile voice suddenly resounded in Suyu's ears. The person who didn't even dare to breathe loudly a moment ago, but now dared to look at Suyu was Cheng. Suyu naturally let go of her. He didn't look at Cheng, nor did he look at Linger. He just clasped his hands behind his back and wore a carefree expression. Linger's face was flushed. When Suyu put her down, she took several rapid breaths, as if she had been holding her breath for a long time. She was very nervous as she was being held by Suyu, but she didn't dare to breathe loudly. She lightly patted her chest, which was heaving up and down intensely. She still couldn't calm down, and her fair face became even redder. Staring blankly at the back of the man who was as noble as a king, Linger felt as if she was in a dream. She still had a surreal feeling. "Linger, are you hurt? I was so worried about you a moment ago." Cheng walked over and stood in front of Linger, blocking Suyu's path. When Linger came back to her senses and heard his insincere concern, she couldn't help but get angry. She then said calmly, "I'm fine, as you didn't need to take such a risk. He saved me, so I didn't die." When Ing Cheng heard Linger's angry words, he became embarrassed. He knew that his previous performance had greatly disappointed her. The more he tried to explain, the more disgusted he would be. He just chuckled and didn't say anything else. He then went to the middle-aged hall master and said, "Hall master, don't worry. You are aware of my relationship with the commander. Even if the lord that the commander serves doesn't get along with the lord that you serve, he won't make things difficult for you for my sake." Chapter 666. The ostentatious flying bird carriage slowly descended. The giant bird's legs were powerful, and when it landed on the ground, Su Yu, who was hundreds of feet away, felt the ground tremble slightly. The strong airflow caused a cloud of dust to rise, causing everyone to squint. "Welcome, Commander Long." 2-3 crystals half-fairies, who were leading the guards, bowed at the same time. Their voices were loud and clear, and their movements were precise. Their expressions were extremely respectful, or rather, they were extremely fearful. The unrelated people in the surroundings also retreated, creating an area with a radius of hundreds of feet. The already crowded street was now completely blocked. Swish! Suddenly, 2 delicate and beautiful maids walked out of the carriage, each holding a cloud-concealing sword as they stood respectfully at the door. After a while, a commotion could be heard from within the carriage. A majestic middle-aged man, who was dressed in luxurious clothes and had a purple gold crown on his head, walked out with his hands clasped behind his back. His face was ordinary, and the only thing that caught people's attention were his eyes, which were slightly dark yellow and gave off a sinister vibe like that of a snake. Anyone who looked into his eyes would feel as if they were being stared at by a poisonous snake. "Get up." The middle-aged man walked out of the carriage and slightly furrowed his brows as he fanned the dust in front of his nose. Only then did the armored soldiers dare to get up. However, they still lowered their heads, not daring to make the slightest movement. Su Yu was surprised and secretly shook his head. What arrogance! He had seen more than 1 or 2 fairies in the otherworldly army, but he had never seen one who liked to put on airs like this. Who is making a ruckus? The middle-aged man had clearly received a reward, but he pretended not to know, emphasizing his words as he asked calmly. The 2-3 crystals half-fairies did not dare to complain, so they repeated what he had said. Only then did he open his eyes and look at Ling Jianlu and the other 3 people in the chains. "Oh, I was wondering who it was. It turns out that you are from the information division. Have you returned from a mission?" The middle-aged man seemed to have just noticed them. Ling Jianlu secretly clenched his teeth. The middle-aged man in front of him was the commander of the Imperial Guards, Long Quan. Both of them had once belonged to the Giant Peak Imperial Guards and held the position of deputy commander, but they did not get along. 3 years ago, the Zhenlong mutation had occurred. Long Quan's talent was higher, and he had the help of the Holy Lord Palace's experts, so he managed to cross his tribulation and advance to the level 1 fairy realm. Naturally, the Spirit Sword Party started to be ostracized. Fortunately, the Spirit Sword Party had elders who were also in the Holy Monarch Palace. Thus, they were taken care of and transferred away from this place to control the information hall. Thus, they could be considered to have avoided Dragon Spring. This way, they would be able to live in peace. It would be hard for Long Quan to find an excuse to cause trouble for them. It was only at times like this that he would inevitably be put in a difficult position. "Commander Long, I have an urgent matter to report to the Sacred Monarch Palace. I hope that you can let us pass quickly. You and I can't afford to delay the battle." Ling Jianlu wasn't afraid and spoke in a reasonable manner. Long Quan's eyelids slightly sank. His originally cold and gloomy eyes seemed to be emitting a chilly aura. However, the corners of his mouth maintained an emotionless smile as he said, "That's right. Since he is the hall master of the morning hall, he will naturally be allowed to pass. Go ahead. Qila. The chains were unlocked and they were allowed to pass. Ling Jianlu pulled Ling along and stepped out. Let's go. Hold on. Hall Master Ling's report is very important. You should leave first. As for Ying Qing and Ling the two of them should stay behind. We need you two to explain the situation of the enemy outside so that we can understand the situation better. Ying Qing didn't say anything, but his eyes were filled with joy. Long Quan was his uncle. It wasn't a secret that Ying Qing was interested in Ling. On the surface, he asked them to stay behind to report the situation of the enemy outside. In reality, he wanted them to spend time alone and cultivate their relationship. How could Ling Jianlu not know what Long Quan was thinking? He immediately frowned. Commander Long, Ying Qing can stay behind alone. Ling was frightened on the way here and needs to rest. Long Quan laughed and waved his hand. Hall Master Ling, don't worry. We are just asking casually. We won't scare Miss Ling, alright, that's it. Bring them away. The situation of the enemy cannot be delayed. Please forgive us. Ling Jianlu was infuriated by such a decision. He couldn't say anything. Since the other party was using the situation of the enemy as an excuse, he couldn't reject it. I don't want to. Ling rolled her eyes at Ying Qing. She despised him from the bottom of her heart for leaving her in the lurch. She tiptoed and chased after Ling Jianlu. Quang. Suddenly, a loud sound came from beneath Long Quan's feet. He stomped on the ground, causing the ground to tremble and give off a loud sound. Long Quan, who had been laughing a moment ago, now had a stern look in his eyes. Impudent! The Imperial Guards are responsible for the safety of the headquarters of the Empire of Darkness. You refuse to cooperate. Are you looking down on the Imperial Guards? Ling had never been reprimanded like this before. Coupled with the aura of the fairy realm that the other party had deliberately released, she was so frightened that her body stiffened and she couldn't move. Ling Jianlu was furious. He was bullying his daughter right in front of him. It was obvious that he was targeting him and making him look bad. However, he couldn't act out. Otherwise, he would be playing into Long Quan's hands. However, even though he didn't dare, there were naturally others who dared to. Imperial Guards. Are the Imperial Guards that impressive? Only those who have returned from outside know about the situation of the enemy outside. Did the Empire of Darkness raise a bunch of useless people? The cold voice came from the cage, from a silver-haired young man. Suyu stepped out with his hands clasped behind his back. He looked around and couldn't hide the disappointment on his face. I had thought that the Empire of Darkness was the mainstay of the Zhenlong continent. I didn't expect it to be so weak. Even a dog should know about the situation of the enemy at its doorstep. What about you? It's fine if you don't know about the situation of the enemy right in front of you. It's fine if you don't dare to rush out to expel the strong enemy. Instead, you are so fierce to your own people. What is your duty? Is it to protect the people of the Empire of Darkness and get through this calamity? Or is it to put on airs and show off your power? Are you weak to the enemies and fierce to your own people? The continuous questioning stunned the Imperial Guards. Since ancient times, no one had ever dared to speak to the Imperial Guards in such a manner. The Imperial Guards were responsible for the safety of the Empire of Darkness. They had the right to act first and report later. Who wouldn't be afraid of them? Following that, many of the Imperial Guards' faces turned red. How could they not know about the enemy at their doorstep? There were people monitoring them all day long. It was only because Long Quan wanted to bring Ling and Ying Qing together that he had found such an excuse. However, they couldn't come up with an explanation. They couldn't possibly reveal Long Quan's secret plan. Ling Jianlu was stunned. His expression changed. Long Quan had been looking for an excuse to make things difficult for them. Although Ling Jianlu knew that Suyu had hidden his abilities well, how could he possibly be a match for Long Quan and so many Imperial Guards? Long Quan was also stunned. He hadn't expected the scene before him. Someone actually dared to reprimand him in such a manner? Who are you? How dare you speak such nonsense in the Empire of Darkness? Long Quan came back to his senses. He was furious. Chapter 667. Before coming here, he had wanted to keep a low profile. However, after witnessing the Imperial Guard's behavior, he couldn't help but feel disgusted. Was this part of the trump card of the Empire of Darkness that Elder Gio said could turn the tide? If this was really the case, then the Empire of Darkness was already rotten to the core, and it wasn't much different from the Heavenly Law Alliance. If even a person like Long Quan could become a leader, then it could be seen how rotten the Empire of Darkness was. Su Yu had come here full of expectations, yet he had encountered such a situation. This really disappointed him, and his desire to borrow soldiers suddenly faded. His intuition told him that the Empire of Darkness wasn't reliable. However, he didn't know that everyone in the city was staring at him in shock, as if he was a monster. Long Quan, the commander of the Imperial Guards, wasn't even qualified to ask about his identity in front of this silver-haired youth? Just how arrogant and domineering was that sentence of "you, stand aside" in just a few short sentences? Even Long Quan himself was instantly dumbfounded. That tone made him feel as though he was facing a sage of the older generation. However, when he came back to his senses, he was both embarrassed and angry. Capture him and interrogate him. Long Quan tried his best to keep his voice calm as he ordered in a deep voice. The surrounding Imperial Guards immediately surrounded Su Yu. However, when they looked at Su Yu, their gazes were filled with surprise and fear. Swoosh! However, before the Imperial Guards could do anything, a red cloud flew over from the horizon. When it got closer, it was discovered that it wasn't a red cloud, but 3 red-robed old men. "It's the inspector!" The crowd shouted in awe. They were even more respectful than the Imperial Guards. The inspector was like the Empire of Darkness's eyes, and he monitored all of the Empire of Darkness's factions. He was responsible for all crimes and rebellions. Moreover, he had the absolute right to act first and report later. When the Seven Lords' Palace was closed, the Inspector was the most powerful organization apart from the Seven Lords of Darkness. He was like a knife hanging above the heads of the Empire of Darkness's people. Anything that violated the Empire of Darkness's laws would be executed by the Inspector. The people of the Empire of Darkness respected the Inspector far more than the Imperial Guards. Damn it! A bunch of meddlesome people. Long Quan, who had a gloomy look on his face, quickly walked forward and greeted them. Commander of the Imperial Guards, Long Quan, greets the 3 inspectors. When the 3 of them landed, their auras were all at the level 1 fairy realm. However, it seemed that he had just broken through, and there was still a big gap between him and Bai Chong. The 3 inspectors had old-fashioned expressions as they looked around. When their eyes landed on the flying bird carriage that almost cut off the entire road, they immediately frowned. The dynasty's law states that those below the saint level cannot have more than 3 mounts. You have 3, so you should kill 2. The commander in the lead was over 80 years old, but he stood ramrod straight. His eyebrows were snow-white, and he gave off a cold feeling. After he finished speaking, the other 2 inspectors stepped forward without saying a word. Each of them slapped a demonic beast's head. Long Quan was shocked. "Are you all crazy? You know that this is the mount that the 3rd Lord gave you." Bang! 2 muffled sounds and 2 blood-curdling screams rang out. The 2 phoenix-like mounts were killed on the spot, leaving only one terrified. "You, how dare you?" Long Quan glared at them. Unexpectedly, the white-browed old man said coldly, "We are just enforcing the law." Yu Guang glanced at the ferocious beast-head carriage and said lightly, "The carriage area is too big, destroy it." The 2 inspectors attacked again. With a crashing sound, the carriage was destroyed. From the beginning to the end, Long Quan did not dare to make a move. This was because he knew very well that once he made a move, he would be committing a great crime of rebelling against the Admiral and the Empire. Even the 3 Saint Lords behind him would not be able to protect him. Do you have any objections to the inspector's punishment? The white-browed old man looked at Long Quan coldly. Long Quan clenched his teeth and suppressed his anger. I have no objections, but this is the mount that the 3rd Lord gave me. So what if it was given by the 3rd Lord? This is the mount that the great Saint Master gave him. If he rides on it, he can't disturb the people in the city. A cold and dignified voice echoed out from the void. The white-browed old man and the other 2 inspectors immediately cupped their fists respectfully and said, "Chief Inspector." Swoosh! A red-robed old man descended from the sky like a phantom. He had a white beard and he looked spirited. "It's Chief Inspector Bai." The crowd started shouting excitedly. "Even the Chief Inspector is here. How did this happen? Isn't the Chief Inspector cultivating in seclusion to become a level 2 fairy? Why did he suddenly appear?" Long Quan's face stiffened and his eyelids twitched. It wasn't difficult to see the fear in his eyes. Compared to the other inspectors, the Chief Inspector was much more terrifying. He had the power to decide the life and death of anyone below the Great Lord level. Even the former 4 great palace masters could be executed on the spot by him. This was something that ordinary inspectors couldn't do. As a commander, Long Quan was within the scope of the Chief Inspector's power. What was worse was that the Chief Inspector was backed by the Great Lord. Even the 3rd Lord, who was backing him, had to be wary of him. His power wasn't much higher than theirs, but his authority was overwhelming. "Greetings. Greetings, Chief Inspector." Long Quan bowed slightly and cupped his fists. The old man clasped his hands behind his back and walked over to Long Quan. "Commander Long, it seems like you aren't satisfied with my handling of the matter. Why don't you tell me about it?" He looked at Long Quan calmly. Long Quan's forehead broke out in a cold sweat when he felt the old man's gaze. His expression became even more respectful. He cupped his fists again and said, "It was a slip of the tongue and I offended you. I hope you can forgive me." The Chief Inspector looked away calmly and said, "All right, this won't happen again." "Thank you, sir." Long Quan heaved a sigh of relief. He felt like his life had been spared, and his heart was still palpitating. "So, what happened here?" the Chief Inspector asked. His gaze fell on the people who were surrounded by the crowd. Suddenly, his pupils contracted, and he fixed his gaze on a silver-haired man with a calm expression. "Sir, that young man has a strange identity. He maliciously slandered the Imperial Guards and misled the crowd. I was just about to arrest him," Long Quan said righteously. The Chief Inspector took a deep breath and looked over. "How did he maliciously slander the Imperial Guards?" Long Quan repeated Su Yu's words. "Of course, he embellished the details and cut out the sensitive parts. Finally, he said, 'This young man is extremely arrogant. He does not respect the Empire of Darkness at all. In fact, I do not have the right to ask about his identity. If this kind of person is not punished severely, it will damage the reputation of the Empire of Darkness.'" The Chief Inspector listened to him without missing a word. He then turned around and looked into Long Quan's eyes. He said coldly, "I am not sure if the rest of his words are true. However, there is one thing that is true. You do not have the right to ask about his identity." Long Quan was stunned. Why did the Chief Inspector say that? In the entire Zhenlong continent, besides the king and the Seven Lords' palace, who else could make him look at them this way? The Ling Jianlu father and daughter pair were also stunned. When Su Yu had said it himself, they had thought that he was bluffing. However, when it came from the Chief Inspector, the meaning was completely different. "Alliance Master Su, please forgive me if I have offended you." After coldly glaring at Long Quan, the Commander Admiral came back to his senses. A smile appeared on his face as he quickly stepped forward and bowed respectfully in front of the crowd. Alliance Master Su? Chapter 668. In the Empire of Darkness, There was no such thing as an alliance master. Alliance master. Ling Jianlu pursed his lips and revealed a thoughtful expression. Suddenly, his eyebrows twitched as a person's name appeared in his mind. He was a young man with a head full of unique long silver hair. Their figures gradually overlap. Could it be that you are the Heavenly Law Alliance Master, Su Yu? Ling Jianlu gasped in shock. His words caused a huge commotion. My God! The Heavenly Law Alliance Master? Sounds of gasping could be heard from the crowd one after another, rising and falling like waves that stretched on endlessly. No, it's impossible. Why would such a person appear in the Empire of Darkness? The crowd was bewildered, and they were all shocked by Su Yu's identity. Linger, who was beside them, was stunned. The Heavenly Law Alliance Master? The legendary expert who stood at the peak of the continent? Alliance Master Su? Her mind was blank, unable to connect the two together. Only when she recalled his fairy-like demeanor did she believe it. Seeing that she was traveling with such a legendary great person, Linger was extremely excited. Her beautiful eyes were filled with tears as she looked at Su Yu. She opened her red lips as if she wanted to say something, but didn't. Although Su Yu was right in front of her, he gave off an oppressive aura that she did not dare to approach. She had never dreamed that she would be able to get so close to the Heavenly Law Alliance Master, the hero she had always admired. However, as she recalled how rude she had been to him, she could not help but feel anxious. Would Alliance Master Su have a bad impression of her? Would he blame her? As she thought about it, she was filled with regret. The great hero was right in front of her, but she had not left a good impression on him. She had even attacked Su Yu, scolding him for being too weak and asking him to focus on cultivation. As she thought about it, her face heated up. It was obvious that Su Yu had given in to her on purpose. However, Ying Cheng was even more afraid than her. It was not a matter of his attitude, but rather, he had once wanted to kill Su Yu. If not for Ling Jianliu's presence, he would have already killed Su Yu. Subconsciously, Ying Cheng took a few steps back. How could he still care about Linger? Who gave you the right to call him Su Yu? Chief Inspector Bai Chong scolded Ling Jianlu. As Ling Jianlu regained his senses, his mind went blank. He had never expected that he would be traveling with the Heavenly Law Alliance Master. Greetings, Alliance Master Su Yu. Please forgive me if I offended you along the way. Ling Jianlu immediately bowed to greet Su Yu. He was both excited and somewhat remorseful. In fact, after Su Yu had attacked, he should have realized that Su Yu's strength and age were similar to the legendary Heavenly Law Alliance Master. Su Yu smiled calmly. Hall Master Ling, you don't have to do this. I should be the one thanking you for bringing me to the giant peak. I should be thanking you for bringing me to the peak. Ling Jianlu was terrified and uneasy. After learning of Su Yu's identity, he suddenly felt that Su Yu's body was emitting an extremely strong pressure that made it difficult for him to breathe. Yu's master Su Yu master was master. Is it really Alliance Master Su? He of Master. Su Yu's Ling, Master Wu Su, Master of Master. Yu Ling, Master, he Master. Rumor has it that he killed Master Xuewu with a single palm strike. Rumor has it that he was just a nameless boy in a barren land. He only took 4 years to climb to the top. It's a miracle. Rumor has it that Yin Yu and Black Snow Devil King, the two peerless geniuses of the continent, are one of his identities. Rumor has it that news of Su Yu's deeds had spread to every corner of the continent in the past 10 days. Even his past experiences and deeds had spread like wildfire across the continent. Suddenly, everyone knew that a demon-like legendary genius had appeared in the Zhenlong continent. In the short span of 4 years, he had risen from a nobody to become the Heavenly Law Alliance's master. He had led the Heavenly Law Alliance's remaining soldiers to destroy the infamous Blood Evil Troop in a tragic manner, creating a new generation of history for the Zhenlong continent. Su Yu was now a legendary figure who could stand shoulder to shoulder with the King of Darkness. Apart from the King of Darkness, no one could rival him. Alliance Master Su! The crowd suddenly burst into wild cheers. Excitement, admiration, longing, and all sorts of other emotions filled the crowd. The crowd also surged forward like a tide. They were all fanatical and devout believers. Su Yu had opened a new chapter in the history of the Zhenlong continent. He had become a hero that everyone knew, even in the Empire of Darkness. This was especially true for the young men and women of the same generation. The young men were filled with longing and excitement, while the young women were filled with admiration. The peerless hero was right in front of them. He was young, handsome, had a high status, and possessed great martial prowess. Screams and shouts could be heard along with the crowd. For a moment it was like a tsunami, and even the mountains were trembling. Even though Su Yu was used to such great enthusiasm, he could not help but be shocked by it. "Chief Inspector Bai, let's talk somewhere else," Su Yu said helplessly. Bai Chong chuckled. He tapped the ground with the tip of his foot and flew into the sky to lead the way. "Welcome, Alliance Master Su. I will bring you to meet the Lord." Su Yu shook his sleeves and left before the crowd could surround him. Before he left, he cupped his hands at Ling Jianlu and Linger. "We will meet again." At the same time, he glanced at Long Quan. His gaze was calm, without any killing intent or emotion. However, Long Quan felt as if he had been electrocuted. His whole body trembled, his vital energy in chaos. His heart was beating so fast that it felt like it was about to jump out of his throat. The moment Su Yu's gaze swept past him, Long Quan felt as if he was about to die. It was as if Su Yu could wipe him off the face of the earth with just a thought. Fortunately, Long Quan could sense that there was no reflection of him in those eyes. In the eyes of such a legendary figure, a small fry like him was indeed not qualified to leave an image. Not only did he not feel humiliated, but he was actually glad. Fortunately, the difference in status between them was huge, and the Heavenly Law Alliance Master did not bother with a small fry like him. Otherwise, with the frightening abilities of the Heavenly Law Alliance Master, he could destroy him with a thought. "Commander Long, can my daughter and I leave now?" Ling Jianlu could not calm his excitement, especially since Su Yu had only said goodbye to him before he left. He was instantly the focus of the crowd. He could feel that many people, whose abilities were no weaker than his, had expressions of fear and respect. This was something that had never happened before. He could not help but feel a sense of pride in his heart. To be able to travel with a legendary figure like the Heavenly Law Alliance Master was an honor that he would never be able to express in his lifetime. Hearing this, Long Quan's facial muscles stiffened. He did not even dare to show his anger. Who knew what the relationship between Ling Jianlu and the Heavenly Law Alliance Master was? Let them pass. How could Long Quan still dare to stop them? After all, Su Yu had not gone far. Ling Jianlu heaved a long sigh of relief. He had never felt so comfortable in a long time. He had never even dreamed that Long Quan would be defeated by him. "Hall Master Ling." The crowd parted, and a beautiful middle-aged woman walked out, accompanied by two maids. "The Heavenly Water Tower's master. It's her. When did she come?" The crowd exclaimed in surprise. Long Quan furrowed his brows and revealed a fearful expression. "Greetings, Heavenly Water Tower's master. May I know why you have come here?" The middle-aged woman smiled. "I'm not here to look for you." She walked gracefully, bringing with her a fragrant scent. The aura of a fairy was faintly discernible. Ling Jianlu felt deep respect for her. It was rumored that the Heavenly Water Tower's master was the granddaughter of a great lord. With the help of the great Saint Master, she had become a Grade 2 fairy 2 years ago. Now, she was preparing to become a Grade 3 fairy. She was an extremely famous person in the Empire of Darkness. With Ling Jianlu's status, it was impossible for him to have any dealings with such a person. He could not afford to be associated with her. Greetings, Heavenly Water Tower's master. Ling Jianlu did not dare to greet her politely. The Heavenly Water Tower's master smiled. Hall Master Ling, you do not need to be so polite. You should go to the Seven Lords' Palace to complete your mission. After you are done, come to the Heavenly Water Tower. I will guide your daughter's cultivation during this period. What? Hearing this, the crowd was shocked. She wants to guide Ling Er's cultivation personally? Even Long Quan was shocked. The Heavenly Water Tower's master had only reached where she was today because she had received guidance from the Great Saint Master. Almost all of her knowledge had come from the Great Saint Master. She had always been a loner and had never guided anyone in their cultivation, let alone welcomed them with a smile like she did today. This was the first time that she was guiding someone in public. This was equivalent to her becoming half a disciple, who would dare to cause trouble for Ling in the future. Those who coveted her beauty would have to think twice about whether they were worthy of such attention. Long Quan's heart sank. If anyone wanted to cause trouble for Ling and her father in the future, they would have to think about it carefully. Thank you, Heavenly Water Tower's master, for your guidance. Ling hurry up and thank her. Ling Jianlu was extremely excited. He had been pleasantly surprised that day. However, he knew very well that it was all thanks to Suyu. It was obvious that the Heavenly Water Tower's master wanted to get close to Ling and understand some of Suyu's situation. Oh, thank you, Heavenly Water Tower's master. Ling was overwhelmed by the favor. Feeling the jealous and envious gazes from the people around her, Ling felt very uncomfortable. Ever since she was born, she had never been in such a situation. What a beautiful young lady. Ling come with me. Hall Master Ling will be here soon. The Heavenly Water Tower's master smiled as she held Ling small hand. She then led her away, leaving behind a crowd of people whose eyes were filled with envy. Hall Master Ling felt refreshed. He let out a long laugh and left as well. After some time, the crowd gradually dispersed. Soon, news spread throughout the Empire of Darkness that the Heavenly Law Alliance master had arrived. This news caused a huge commotion. If not for the fact that Suyu had already entered the Seven Lords' Palace, there would have been another chaotic scene. The interior of the giant mountain was divided into 9 layers. Each layer was an independent space. Suyu had entered the space at the bottom, while there were still 8 spaces above him. Every place was packed with people. The dense crowd was the most unique scene in the giant peak. Suyu frowned slightly and pondered. Chief Inspector Bai, the Empire of Darkness has such a huge population and many martial artists. How do they manage to supply resources? In terms of population, the Empire of Darkness had at least 200,000 people. With such a huge population, just training resources, food, and drinking water would be a huge problem. Chapter 669. This caused Suyu to feel a little incredulous. The Empire of Darkness was heavily surrounded, so how could the giant mountain provide them with such a huge amount of resources? Governor Bai had a troubled look on his face. Alliance Master Su, you have great insight. Our Empire of Darkness does indeed have another source of supply. There are tens of thousands of years' worth of resources stored there. It is more than enough to supply such a large population for 100 years. There is no need to worry. He didn't say where the source of the supply came from, so Suyu obviously wouldn't ask for a rebuff. I see. Suyu nodded, not asking any further questions. The Seven Lords' Palace was located on the 7th floor, just below the 8th floor. This signified its high status. Suyu arrived at the 7th level through the transportation portal. Raising his head, he saw that the 8th floor was right in front of him, and the highest floor, the 9th floor, was right above him. It was rumored that the King of Darkness was on the 9th floor, and he hadn't taken a single step out for several hundred years. No one even knew if he was still alive or not. During this trip, Su Yu's mission was to borrow the King of Darkness's soldiers to obstruct the Fifth Saint Master's army. However, after seeing Long Quan, Su Yu had some doubts in his heart. Was the Empire of Darkness army, which had never gone into battle, really worth borrowing? In any case, it was better to pay a visit to the King of Darkness first. As for whether he wanted to borrow troops or not, it would depend on their character. Alliance Master Su, please wait for a moment. I will immediately inform the Seven Lords' Palace. Bai Chong brought Su Yu to an ancient palace. Outside the hall, two spirited old men were playing chess. They were extremely focused, and their auras were extraordinary. When he examined them, he discovered that their vital energy was boundless and vast, and it was a sign that they were about to advance into the level 3 fairy realm. Could he be one of the Seven Lords' Palace's saints? Greetings, Black and White Elders. Please inform them that Alliance Master Su has arrived. These two people, who were about to advance to the level 3 fairy realm, were just gatekeepers? Su Yu was secretly shocked. It was as he had expected. The Empire of Darkness Foundation was extremely strong. The Heavenly Law Alliance Master? The two old men stopped paying attention to the chessboard and looked at Su Yu in surprise. However, his expression was calm, without the excitement or longing of others. Let's talk about it after the game is over. The two old men glanced at each other before withdrawing their gazes. What they meant was for Su Yu to wait for them to finish their game of chess. How was this the way to treat a guest? This was clearly a humiliation. Not to mention Su Yu's identity, which represented a great force. Even if he was an ordinary guest, there was no reason for him to be stopped outside the door by the gatekeeper. Bai Chong had a troubled look on his face. This, Black and White Elders, he is the Heavenly Law Alliance Master. He is a guest from afar. If you do this, there's no place for you to speak here. If you want to wait, then wait. If you can't wait, then leave. The two old men didn't even lift their eyelids as they spoke indifferently. His calm expression was filled with arrogance. They had obviously heard of Su Yu's name, but they still dared to be so arrogant. Su Yu knew what they were thinking. The Prime Minister's doorstep is a 7th-ranked official. So what if he's guarding the door? It's interesting to see his sense of superiority. Su Yu chuckled. He couldn't help but feel disdain for them. The two of them thought that they were the Seven Lords' Palace's gatekeepers, yet they were so arrogant. It was laughable and pathetic. A chess piece landed on the board. The black-robed old man glanced over. His expression was still calm as he said, "It is not your place to behave atrociously in front of the Seven Lords' Palace. A loose tongue can cause trouble. Remember this." Su Yu smiled faintly. It's easy to deal with the King of Hell, but it's difficult to deal with the little devils. Just focus on guarding the door. Farewell. After witnessing Long Quan, Su Yu was already disappointed with the Empire of Darkness's army. However, since he was already here, there was no reason for him not to pay his respects. Now, he was being blocked by two insignificant gatekeepers. It would be difficult for him to even meet the Seven Lords' Palace's lords, let alone the King of Darkness. I really made an unnecessary move. Su Yu laughed at himself. If he had known that this would happen, he wouldn't have come to the Heavenly Law Alliance. Swish, keep it. It's up to you whether you pass it on or not. Su Yu took out Elder Jio's handwritten letter and threw it on the chessboard. After he finished speaking, he flicked his sleeves and took his leave. Bai Chong looked anxious, but the two old men didn't seem to care at all. Bai Chong didn't dare to scold them, so he could only chase after Su Yu and apologize repeatedly. Alliance Master Su, please wait for a moment. Let me explain. Su Yu waved his hand at him. As he entered the teleportation space, he said, Chief Inspector Bai, you don't have to be like this. This matter has nothing to do with you. I should be thanking you for your hospitality. Sigh. The two old men are just like that. They are proud and arrogant, and the people of the Empire of Darkness have also been mistreated by them. Alliance Master Su, You don't have to bother with them. Bai Chong sighed helplessly as he pondered the matter. The Heavenly Law Alliance's master must have come here for some important matter. However, the two old men were too arrogant and didn't know what was important. Su Yu didn't bother with the two old men anymore, so he changed the topic. Chief Inspector Bai, do you have these two elixirs for sale in the Empire? He took out a list of the Phoenix Tail Purple Fire elixirs and the Peerless Moon Fall elixirs, which were needed to save the Phoenix Master Chiu. Bai Chong was surprised by this, and when he took a look at the list, he furrowed his long white brows. The Phoenix Tail Purple Fire elixir is easy to obtain, as I have one that I can give to you. However, the Peerless Moon Fall elixir is really difficult to obtain. Why? The Empire is so prosperous, yet you don't have such an elixir for sale? Su Yu couldn't help but wonder. Bai Chong shook his head. No, it's not that we don't have any elixirs for sale. It's just that these elixirs are somewhat special, as they require a full moon's light in order to be refined. Moreover, after they are refined, they can only be used for half a month. Today is the middle of the month, so even if we still have the Peerless Moon Fall elixir, its medicinal power should be running out. Moreover, if we want to obtain a new Peerless Moon Fall elixir, we will have to wait for half a month. Alliance Master Su, you really came at a bad time. Wait for half a month? How could Su Yu wait for that long? After all, the Fifth Saint Master's army could come out of seclusion at any moment and destroy the northern continent. However, the Phoenix Master Chiu's injuries weren't light, and if he couldn't gather the elixirs within half a month, her injuries might worsen, and she might never wake up again. Wait. It's not that there isn't a way, but it's a bit difficult, Bai Chong suddenly said. Su Yu raised his brows. Chief Inspector Bai, please speak. There is a hidden space within the Empire's giant mountain. This space is a secret realm, and the flow of time here is different from the outside world. According to my calculations, today should be a full moon. If we can obtain a full moon's light, we can refine the Peerless Moon Fall elixir, Bai Chong said. Su Yu was astonished. A hidden space? Is it the 8th layer? The Seven Lords' Palace was a majestic existence, yet it could only exist in the 7th layer. So, it was obvious that the 8th layer was an extremely important place. Alliance Master Su, you are really smart, Bai Chong said with a smile. A thoughtful look appeared in Su Yu's eyes. Could it be that the 8th layer is a place that provides resources for the whole empire? That's not the case. The 8th layer isn't empty because it has an abundance of resources. On the contrary, the 8th layer's space is extremely unstable, and spatial fissures often appear there. It's extremely dangerous, so it's uninhabitable. As such, few people go there. However, it's also because of this that the frequent spatial fissures cause a difference in the flow of time. Some people use this difference in the flow of time to cultivate within it. Of course, there are also some people who occasionally enter it to obtain a full moon's light. Using the time difference to cultivate? Su Yu suddenly thought about how he could control time. How much slower is the 8th layer's time compared to the outside world? Su Yu asked. Bai Chong replied, 2 hours in the 8th layer's space is equivalent to 4 hours in the outside world, which means that there is a difference of 2 times the flow of time. 2 times was quite a lot, and it wasn't without reason that the Empire of Darkness had managed to produce so many fairies in just 3 years. She then added, however, only a few people can stay inside for 4 hours, as miasma will seep in every 2 hours due to the cracks. The miasma contains an extremely intense poison, and once it comes into contact with it, even a level 3 fairy will faint. This is why the people inside will leave every 2 hours, and they will wait for 4 hours before entering again. Then, they will enter again. Su Yu smacked his lips when he heard this. What kind of miasma is so powerful that it can even affect grade 3 fairies? It seems like the time difference here isn't that easy to deal with. Alliance Master Su, why don't you wait for a moment? I will personally enter it and obtain a full moon's light. Bai Chong was extremely earnest. Su Yu was slightly embarrassed. After all, he had even stolen Bai Chong's cloud-galloping horse. Perhaps it was because of his status, or perhaps it was because he respected Su Yu, but he had never mentioned it. So, how could he allow Bai Chong to take such a risk for him? Although Bai Chong didn't say it clearly, Su Yu knew that it wasn't a good place. "Chief Inspector Bai, may I enter?" Su Yu asked. Bai Chong hesitated for a moment before replying. According to the rules, only the Empire's people are allowed to enter. After all, such an important place wouldn't allow outsiders to enter. Then, what if I hide my identity? Su Yu took out a mask and put it on. Bai Chong hesitated for a moment before replying. Fine, the 8th layer isn't anything important. Alliance Master Su, you won't cause any harm to the Empire if you enter. Follow me. An hour passed. At the end of the 7th layer, there was a teleportation formation. It was ancient and damaged, and it seemed like it had been used frequently. Sizzle! All of a sudden, the formation flickered intensely, and a large number of people fell out of it. There were more than 10 of them. The people who came out at the front were still fine, but the ones who came out at the back were in a more sorry state. There were even some people who were carrying fainted people out. Everyone's faces were filled with shock, and they were all discussing the matter in shock. What happened? Bai Chong's heart tightened, and he immediately walked over to check on the person who had fainted. It was a young man in his early 30s, and his face was purple. It was obvious that he had been poisoned. "Greetings, Chief Inspector." Seeing that it was the Chief Inspector, everyone was filled with respect and greeted him. "Chief Inspector, it's Miasma." The person who was supporting him was a young woman in her 30s. She seemed to be his wife, and there were tears on her face. Her face was also purple, as if she had been poisoned. Bai Chong raised his brows. "Apart from him, is there anyone else who is injured?" Similar things happened occasionally, especially when people were cultivating alone. Without a companion to remind them, they would lose track of time and cultivate for more than an hour. Then, they would be affected by the miasma. There were even some people who were far away from the teleportation formation, and they couldn't escape in time. However, the Empire had already demarcated a safe zone near the teleportation formation. As long as one didn't leave the safe zone, there wouldn't be any danger. Chapter 670. No. The young woman shook her head. However, 2 people did not manage to escape. Did someone die inside? Bai Chong was shocked. Did you leave the safe zone and could not escape in time? Looking at the pale faces of the people around him, Bai Chong realized that something was wrong. No, we were all in the safe zone, but the miasma did not erupt on time. Instead, it came suddenly. Fortunately, we were close to the spell, so we were able to escape in time. However, those 2 people did not make it back. The miasma suddenly erupted? Bai Chong's eyes shone. Who are those 2? Did they leave the safe zone and enter the depths of the space? The young woman nodded. Yes, they said they had a mission to enter the depths of the transportation portal to repair the crack. However, not long after they entered, the miasma suddenly erupted. They seem to be Palace Master Nan Guang and Inspector Bai Yun, who have just returned. It is said that they want to atone for their crimes and enter the space to carry out a dangerous mission. Bai Chong nodded. His eyes shone, as if he knew what was going on. Take him to rest. Don't tell anyone about what happened here, Bai Chong said coldly with a taut face. How could they dare disobey him? Moreover, after the danger they had just experienced, they did not dare enter the space to cultivate. Alliance Master Su, it looks like we will have to wait for a while. I did not expect the miasma to suddenly erupt. We are in danger now. Bai Chong sighed. Su Yu thought to himself. He had been observing Bai Chong's expression all this while. It seemed as if Bai Chong was hiding something. Palace Master Nan Guang and Bai Yun were being punished for carrying out a dangerous mission. However, Bai Chong was not willing to reveal what kind of mission they were carrying out. All right, we will wait for a while, Suyu said helplessly. As they waited, Bai Chong handed Suyu a cold jade gourd. This is a gourd made of moon-cold jade. It can store moonlight. After you enter, find a place with ample moonlight, open the gourd, and leave it there for the time it takes to drink a cup of tea. Then, you will be able to store enough moonlight. Take it out, and I will help you refine the Peerless Moonfall Pill. Also, the area within 30 miles of the transportation portal is a safe zone. There is enough moonlight there. Remember not to go beyond 30 miles. Otherwise, if there is an emergency, you will end up like them. You will either be injured or unable to return. Suyu's expression was stern. I understand. 2 hours passed. Well, the miasma should have dissipated. You can go in now. Bai Chong infused his genuine qi into the formation and activated it. Because of the accident, Suyu was the only one who entered. I'll be right back. Suyu cupped his fists at her, then stepped onto the transportation portal and entered it. With a flash of white light, Suyu was teleported away. Bai Chong, who was standing in the same spot, pondered for a moment before stepping onto the teleportation formation. He looked worried. I hope that place has been repaired. After he spoke, Bai Chong also entered the teleportation portal. However, the teleportation portal's location was different from Suyu's. When Suyu opened his eyes, a faint stench assaulted his nostrils. Without hesitation, Suyu revolved his vital energy to cover the surface of his body to block the stench. What entered his eyes was a hazy light purple world, as if the entire world was covered in mist. This is the residual miasma, right? Although it has lost its toxicity, if one inhales too much of it, there will still be unexpected dangers. Suyu remained vigilant at all times. Zhang Xian took a moment to sense the spiritual energy in this place, and he found that the spiritual energy in this place was actually quite thin, about 20 to 30% weaker than the spiritual energy in the outside world. Logically speaking, this place was not suitable for cultivation. However, the flow of time in this place was very attractive. Time was of the essence, so Suyu did not waste any time. Using his soul eyes, although the mist was thick, he could roughly see everything within a 3-mile radius. There is moonlight. Suyu discovered that, 3 miles away, there was a gentle light shining down from the sky, enveloping a small hill. With a tap of his toes, Suyu arrived at the small hill in a few flashes. He could see that the dense purple clouds in the sky were penetrated by the moonlight. A hazy, dreamy light shone down on a small stone. Looking at the source of the moonlight, a bright moon hung in the sky. It was a full moon. Suyu took out the jade gourd and placed it on the small stone, quietly absorbing the light of the full moon. He stood to the side, paying attention to his surroundings in case the miasma exploded again. All of a sudden, Suyu vaguely saw a blurry silhouette 3 miles away. It was staggering in the direction of the transportation station. Thump, before long, the figure tumbled onto the ground, never to get up again. There is still someone alive? Suyu was slightly surprised. Without thinking too much, Suyu flew over. He landed next to the figure on the ground, took a closer look, and could not help but be shocked. It really is you, Palace Master Nan Guang. The person on the ground was a middle-aged woman. Her eyelashes were trembling, and although her eyes were closed, one could see that her eyeballs were moving rapidly. At the same time, her snow-white forehead tightened, showing an expression of pain. Didn't they say that even grade 3 fairies would faint from the poison? Palace Master Nan Guang is not dead, and yet she is still alive? Suyu was surprised. Suddenly, he saw a red rope hanging around her neck. The pendant was buried in her chest, but he did not know what it was. However, the faint miasma that came close to Palace Master Nan Guang was absorbed into the pendant. It must have been this item that saved her life. Speaking of which, it was reasonable for Palace Master Nan Guang to be punished because she had lost the Northern Continent's division. It was somewhat related to Suyu, so of course he would not leave her to die. Suyu helped her up and sat her down with his legs crossed. He then placed his palms on her back and transferred his vital energy into her, helping her expel the poison from her body. To Suyu's surprise, as soon as his vital energy entered her body, it disappeared without a trace. Although this pendant is precious and saved her life, it has now had the opposite effect. Even my vital energy has been sucked away. Suyu immediately discovered the source of the problem, so he had no choice but to remove Palace Master Nanguang's pendant. I hope there is no misunderstanding. Suyu laughed bitterly. He then took off the pendant. Once he was done, Suyu immediately began to treat her injuries. Wherever his vital energy passed through, the poison in Palace Master Nanguang's body would be expelled from her pores. From afar, Palace Master Nanguang's body was covered with a layer of faint purple fog. It was a poisonous fog. After a while, there was no longer any poisonous fog left in her body. The pain on her face had been greatly alleviated, and she now looked like she was in a deep sleep. Suyu retracted his palms and calculated that the jade gourd should have absorbed enough moonlight. He carried Palace Master Nanguang back to the small hill and examined the jade gourd. The jade gourd was flowing with a golden current that looked like flowing water. Full moon's light. Suyu took out the lid of the gourd and put it back into his robes. It's time to leave. Suyu was about to leave with Palace Master Nanguang when a jade box slipped out of Palace Master Nanguang's sleeve. Suyu did not think too much about it. He grabbed the box and took it with him. However, when he saw the object in the jade box, Suyu looked at it in shock. The cloud galloping horse's hair? Inside the jade box, there was a white hair sealed in layers. Suyu had this hair as well, and he had taken 300 of it from a cloud galloping horse. Why does she have the cloud galloping horse's hair? Suyu was shocked. The hair contained a strong poison that could kill anyone below the grade 4 fairy realm. Suyu had almost been poisoned to death when he had inhaled a small amount of the hair. The poison was still fresh in his mind. Moreover, he had experienced the power of the cloud galloping horse. It had pushed him from a 2 crystals half-fairy realm to the peak of a 3 crystals half-fairy realm. Suyu's mind raced as he recalled Palace Master Nanguang's mission and Bai Chang's evasive words. He could not help but look into the depths of the space. Could the cloud galloping horse have grown up here? That did not seem possible. According to Yunyazi, even the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion could not nurture the cloud galloping horse, let alone the 8th level, where the spiritual energy was thin. However, it was better to believe it than not. Suyu returned to the transportation portal and placed Palace Master Nanguang on it. He then activated the portal and transported her to the outside world. Suyu then flew into the depths of the space. Soon, Suyu was 30 miles away. After walking for 30 miles, the remaining miasma in the air suddenly became thicker. After taking a breath, Suyu felt his head swell and his chest become heavy. It was extremely uncomfortable. Suyu held Palace Master Nanguang's pendant in his hand. Immediately, the situation was alleviated. With the help of the pendant, Suyu quickly went deeper. The space was not big, and in the time it took to drink half a cup of tea, Suyu had already traveled thousands of miles. The deeper he went, the more desolate it became. Of course, he had seen a few corpses along the way. It was unknown how long they had been dead. At the end of the space was a hazy, chaotic zone, filled with dangerous cracks in the space. Creak. Suddenly, Suyu heard a soft explosion sound. He was shocked, and he turned around to dodge it without hesitation. Just as he was about to leave, a black crack the size of a strand of hair flashed past his right calf. Suyu could not help but be vigilant. Although it was just a weak space power, if it had passed through his calf, it would have cut his calf in half. The danger of this place was not just for show. However, even at the end of the space, it was still very wide. He did not know where Palace Master Nanguang had obtained the cloud galloping horse's hair. At that moment, a wave of vital energy came from 10 miles away. Suyu looked over and could faintly see a crooked stone tablet in the midst of the remaining miasma. The wave had come from there. Strange. There is still someone here? Moreover, why is he here? Suyu was curious. After thinking about it for a moment, he flew over and hid a mile away. After investigating the area, Suyu was shocked to discover that there was a corpse lying under the stone tablet. It was none other than Inspector Bai Yun. However, his whole body was festering, which meant that he had been killed by a deadly poison. There was a crack in the space above the stone tablet, which only allowed one person to pass through. Compared to the other cracks in the space, this one was much more stable. It seemed like it had existed for a very long time. Around the crack there were still vital energy waves. Could the cloud galloping horse have come from this crack? Suyu pondered. After thinking for a moment, he looked around and entered the crack. However, just as he entered the crack, a black shadow suddenly attacked him. It was carrying a deadly poison that could make one's scalp go numb. This poison was the cloud galloping horse's poison.